Test, 1, 2. We're good? All right. Brian, you ready?
Well, no, I'm not ready yet.
All right, well, we'll call it, we're good. We're coming back, yeah. All right, so tonight's meeting is being streamed live on YouTube and Facebook and will be broadcast on cable channel 10 HD 1090 following the meeting. Attendees are participating in person and via teleconference. Guests that are included in staff presentations will be excused at the conclusion of the agenda item as appropriate. I will now turn to Julie and ask her to take roll. If you would please take roll at this time.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Present.
Councilmember Stuckey.
Present.
Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Present.
Councilmember Arms.
Present.
Mayor, Councilmember Wiesner and Mayor Pro Tem Heisen have requested to be excused this evening.
Great. I would entertain a motion to excuse them. Yes.
I move to excuse Mayor Pro Tem Heisen and Councilmember Wiesner. Second.
We have a motion to excuse Mayor Pro Tem Heisen and Councilmember Wiesner by Councilmember Marshall, seconded by Councilmember Wittgenstein. All those in favor, raise your right hand. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, next we're going to move on to approval of agenda. Are there any suggested changes to the agenda? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to, or I suggest we move item 6D and 8C up to after Mayor and Councilmember comments, please.
All right, so I have a motion to move item 6D and you said 8C?
I'll second that motion.
After Mayor and Councilmember comments, we have a motion by Councilmember Marshall, seconded by Councilmember Wittgenstein. Is there any further discussion on this issue before we take a vote? All right, all those in favor, raise your right hand. What? Oh, all those in favor, raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then all those opposed? Abstain? Oh, you're opposed. Okay.
No, I'm for.
Okay, so there's 4 in favor of. I didn't see your hand raised.
Trying to make it easier on everyone.
So there's 4 for it, 1 abstention. Motion passes. All right. Next, we have presentations, and for our first presentation, we have our Public Works Director, Mr. Steve Schuler, to discuss National Public Works Week.
Good evening, Mayor Wright and council members. As we celebrate National Public Works Week, it'd be insightful to hear from multiple generations on the foundational nature of our city infrastructure. And I just have a few quotes here. From the younger generation of professionals, the quote is, "Municipalities that do not budget and plan for infrastructure upgrades will eventually become unlivable." H. Smith Investment Firm Managing Partner. From a seasoned generation of professionals, infrastructure is the backbone of economic growth. It improves access to basic services such as clean water, creates jobs, and boosts businesses. Sir Sharma, Secretary of State and member of the British Parliament. From our older generations, a successful society is characterized by increasing investment in infrastructure, which generates financial surplus and investment in new discoveries. R. Trout, American broadcaster and reporter. And lastly, from our previous generations, a century ago, show me a healthy community with a healthy economy, and I will show you a community that has its green infrastructure in order and understands the relationship between the built environment and the unbuilt environment. Will Rogers, early 1900s performer, actor, and social commentator. This year's theme for National Public Work Week is Advancing Quality of Life for All. The City of Oak Harbor's public works professionals provide essential services that lead to a healthier, happier, and more vibrant community. They advance our quality of life whether as a first responder, regular solid waste pickup, or plentiful clean drinking water, and a myriad of other ways they silently serve their communities. In tonight's proclamation, you will hear only a rudimentary list of the services our hardworking staff provide. They are a key part of what makes our community a dynamic place to live and work. As the proclamation is read, join us in celebrating the quiet work of these professionals that make our life better each day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Schuler. I would like to request now that Councilmember Stuckey read the National Public Works Week proclamation.
Be happy to, Mayor. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of Oak Harbor. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is known it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in Oak Harbor to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2024 marks the 64th annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now therefore, we, Mayor Ronnie Wright, and the council members of the city of Oak Harbor hereby do proclaim the week of May 19th to the 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week. We urge all citizens to join representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our National Board of Health, Safety, and advancing quality of life for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. I will now move into citizen comment period. Citizens may comment on consent agenda items or subjects of interest not listed on the agenda at this time. Citizens will have the opportunity to comment on the remaining agenda items during the meeting as appropriate. Citizens can also visit our website prior to our meetings for methods to submit public comment or contact the city clerk, Julie Nestor, by phone or email. When submitting comments, please include your name and address. Public comments sent anonymously will be shared with the mayor and council but will not be displayed. We received 17 new public comments since our last regular meeting. I'm going to attempt to read all of these names, and I'm going to apologize up front if I'm messing anyone's name up. One from Jeanette North, that one was easy, of Oak Harbor, regarding planning for Galleon duplexes. One from April Estelle and Patrick Keeney of Oak Harbor regarding proposed ordinance 1993. And 14 from Rebecca White, Sheila Ryan, Perry Yaw, Kristen Swenson of Oak Harbor, and from David Stenberg, Dan Voorhees, David Felice, Ann Casey, Paula Shafransky, Tim Kangas, Robert Kenny, and Julie Glover, and Marnie Jackson, Zachary Badadoui, and Steve Erickson of Whidbey Environment Action Network, who are not residents of Oak Harbor, regarding the proposed ordinance 1999 relating to the sale of real property. Those comments will be displayed with that item. Are there any members of the public present who wish to speak to items that are not listed on the agenda or on the consent agenda? If so, the clerk will call your name in the order in which you signed in to speak.
Mayor, of all of those who signed in to speak this evening, only 2 are signed in to speak to items that are not on either the consent agenda or the regular agenda.
Okay.
The first is Mr. Joe Coomer, who wishes to speak to earthquakes proof.
Great. Mr. Coomer, if you could step forward and... Can you hear?
My name is Joseph Coomer. I reside at 2920 North Hello Road in Oak Harbor. And I'm here to inform you, that I have invented solutions to earthquakes, forest fires, and floods. And I have designed a new airport that has one runway that is round and specially banked. Tonight, I want to talk about designing structures to be earthquake-proof. Okay? It is very simple. Suspend the structure. When you suspend the structure, you have the earthquake moves down here, but there's one requirement. It can have no foundation because it ties the structure to the quick moving earth. So you replace the foundation with suspension supports. And what really happens is the earth will move, the structure will not. And with no movement, there are no dynamic loads created, and the structure is earthquake proof. See, what has happened in the past, and it's very important to understand, like in college, universities, they have think tanks, I call them, that are staffed with PhD people, and they're stuck in a rut, believing that only designing a structure strong enough to sustain an earthquake, and the best they can do is design a structure that can survive a magnitude 6. If you suspend a structure, it will survive every earthquake. If you do it right, it had no foundation, okay? Even a magnitude 10. And a magnitude 10 is 40 times stronger than a magnitude 6. What I'm looking for is this body to study my work seriously and endorse it, because I'm standing alone trying to get stuff published, and I can't get published because editors, see, what's happened is I wrote 13 letters to FEMA and not a damn response. Those turkeys back there, they're so ingrained in their belief that you have to make it strong enough, they don't even look at my work. And it's sad because they are responsible, and the other thing is that they could be the root of cause of a huge amount of liability clause, because when they don't renew their job, the whole thing. See, what is very important is I want to get this published for my demise, okay? And it would end the danger of earthquakes. I'm very serious about this stuff, and I'm looking for you people as a body to endorse, study what I've written, be convinced, and endorse it. This is very important, you know. Like I say, in the quake that happened on February 6th of 2023, okay?
Mr. Coomer?
Okay.
I'm very sorry, sir. You get 3 minutes, and your
Okay,
3 minutes is now
I
expired.
would just say that there was almost 60,000 people died in that quake. So this is something, and I really want you to study my work. And I'd like to have a private meeting with you, with the body sometime when it's convenient to you. So give me a call. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mr. Coomer.
Mayor, the other individual that signed up to speak to item not on our regular agenda or on the consent agenda is Natasha Zielinski, who has titled what she wishes to speak about, Imagine.
I'd like to make a quick suggestion. Just furnish some ears or something so for the hard of hearing people. They make them and so forth, and I'd like to have something I can hear. Okay?
Good evening. Nice to see everyone. My name is Netza Zielinski, and I've worked with a little park down off of Bayshore called Imagine for years. We understand that a Hilton Hotel might be possibly in the wind, and Imagine is right in front of it. Now, Imagine has gone through a lot changes. But what the good thing is we have over 160 varieties of fruit, of trees and shrubs and vines and bushes that are all doing well. And what would like to suggest, and I sent a letter to the mayor's office and also to the Parks Department, is that we work closer together. Our board is, in a sense, aging. And it's really hard for us to show up every Saturday and do the huge amount of work that it just takes to maintain it in the summer times. So I'm thinking that if we could work together with the park department, more on maintenance, more on maybe a concrete path for wheelchairs and elderly, and open it up a little bit so we can see more what's going on in there, and clean up the edges really sharp. So if people did really want to come from the Hilton Hotel and see a food forest, which is an environmental piece, an educational piece, and our information boards could be as nice as what you have throughout the different parks around town. I'm just suggesting that we begin to work together and envision that Imagine becomes an actual show place. It already has producing food. Every tree is producing food. It is a success that way, but what we need is the beauty of it to kind of shine. So if we cleaned up the edges, and if we had help with watering from the Parks Department, and we would always still work with you. It's just a matter of working together so that we can kind of clean it up. And thank you very much for letting me take your time.
Thank you, Ms. Zielinski. Could you just state your address for the record, though?
Yes, it's 1300 Grateful Acres, Coopville, Washington.
Great, thank you so much. All right, are there any other members of the public present who wish to speak to items that are not listed on the agenda or on the consent agenda that did not sign up on the list prior to or when they came in? All right, hearing no one else who wishes to speak to items not on the agenda or on the consent agenda at this time, we'll close public comment and we'll move on to our consent agenda. Staff has presented the list consent agenda items, all of which were included in the meeting packet. Are there any objections or changes to the consent agenda as presented? Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to remove consent agenda item E.
Okay, so we have motion to move.
Second that motion.
Second by Councilmember Wittgenstein. So we're moving consent agenda item E from the consent agenda item. Are there any other changes to the consent agenda item? So do we have a motion then to approve the consent agenda items as per, yes?
I move to approve
Yeah,
the
that's fine.
remainder of the consent agenda items as presented.
Okay, great. So it's, and
Second.
all in favor, raise your right hand. So we're all good then with the consent agenda items, with the exception of now with consent agenda item 4E. Do we want to discuss that this time?
Sure, I just would like to push it back later into the agenda, just simply because part of the language says, one of the requirements of the grant are there are resources available to fund the remaining portion of each position. And so, given that we have to talk about the B&O tax later in the agenda.
So you want to make it after that?
Yeah, so make it after that, so we can kind of just see, where we're at with that.
So just moving it to the end, does that work for everyone? Is everyone in favor of that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, so we will do that accordingly. And then move on to mayor's comments. I would like to start with kudos for our staff. Our marina staff received this email praising their efforts in restoring power to the marina on May 9th. Mr. Christopher Skinner wrote, "Kudos to the Oak Harbor Marina staff for meeting this challenge and for the obvious extra effort that went into fixing the problem as quickly as possible. I also really appreciate your willingness to keep us informed as progress was being made. Great job to Chris Sublett, Brian Smith, and our entire Parks and Marina staff. They all did a fantastic job on this issue. Leadership Whidbey, congratulations to this year's graduates, including our Deputy City Administrator David Goldman and our Parks and Recreation Director Brian Smith. It was a pleasure attending their graduation at Greenbank Farms. Also, congratulations to Dana McCullough, who is our new Executive Director of our Oak Harbor Chamber, who's with us tonight as well. Congratulations to you as well. You were also an attendee and a graduate. Upcoming city closures. All city offices will be closed for Memorial Day, Monday, May 27th, and the city will hold its first of 3 yearly all-staff meetings on Wednesday morning, May 29th at the Clean Water Facility Interpretive Center. City offices will be closed from 7:30 to 11:30 a.m., to allow all who are able to attend. I look forward to celebrating our staff there at that meeting. This last week, I had the pleasure of attending a showcase of Oak Harbor High School students' artwork this past week, and was very impressed by the caliber of work at that art show. I encourage all of those to attend when they have another one coming up in the next quarter. Sailors of the Year. I had the honor of recognizing the 2023 Sailors of the Year at a recent joint luncheon of the Navy League and Oak Harbor Rotary Club. Congratulations to all of the selectees. Local events. There are several terrific special events happening in our area, many of which are displayed on the screen. And in support of our staff, before I call upon the council for their comments this evening, I would like to say a few words about the importance of accuracy and transparency in government. It has come to my attention, particularly in this past week, that several items on our agenda this evening have been misunderstood or misrepresented by members of the public, by members of the press, and to some extent even by members of our city council. One such item on our public hearing agenda this evening is the proposed ordinance number 1999, updating Oak Harbor Municipal Code Section 1.30.010 for requirements for sale or other disposition of city real property. The city of Oak Harbor is one of only a few cities in the state that has this language regarding city property. This was brought to the council's attention when the city's legal counsel was researching another item. Staff presented it at the April 24th, 2024 City Council workshop to discuss the option of updating the code. It was also on the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board agenda in May. Oak Harbor Municipal Code 1.30.010 reads, "No real property of the city shall be sold, released, leased, demised, traded, exchanged, or otherwise disposed of unless the same is authorized by the City Council after public hearing. Notice of such public hearing shall be given by publication of the notice in the city's official newspaper at least 10 days prior to the hearing." The city is considering removing the last sentence, "Developed city park property shall not be disposed of in any manner without citizen approval in an election, except as provided in subsection 2 of this section." The city currently utilizes a public hearing process for the sale of or surplus of any real property. This ordinance update does not change that. It only removes the language specific to holding an election in addition to this process. Placing an item on a ballot for election is a costly and time-consuming process. For example, our recent fire levy ballot measure cost the city and our taxpayers $36,000. The language requiring an election is viewed as an impediment to accomplish necessary public purpose improvements for items like water, sewer, or roadway enhancements. This proposed change was not about economic development impediment, but service improvements. Our staff is dedicated to doing their best for the good of our city. This includes saving money while ensuring and not avoiding a full public process. I appreciate the constituents from our community that use the correct tool to provide council with their comments. Social media is not the format. We do not take public comment via Facebook or other media sites. Those comments are not logged as public comment, and our staff does not respond to them. As a personal note, I find that there are negative effects to staff morale when we as leaders debate items on Facebook. Addressing misinformation increases staff's workload to provide correct information to the public. Additionally, it's hard to unring a bell. Specifically, I'd like to address the proposed business and occupation tax. The recent online conversations focus on one department when these potential funds would be intended to address overall city needs. This is in place in many other cities of our size and would be utilized to meet the growing need for a greater police, drug enforcement, and safety presence in our community, and federally required increased cybersecurity for our city. This revenue would support several added positions and programs of which our police department is just one part. Funding from a B&O tax could also be utilized to pay the increased cost of indigent defense, for debt service expenses related to parks and recreation facilities, including a potential new recreation center, marina dredging, parks administrative staffing, low-income resident assistance, and infrastructure repairs. As a business owner myself, I understand the importance of a balanced budget. As a vibrant community, we have several programs and initiatives the community is requesting, and we have to identify ways to fund these going forward. As the mayor, I have tasked my leadership team with being more transparent with the council and the public about methods to address community needs. With that in mind, this is an option our deputy city administrator is bringing to council's attention. However, if the B&O tax is not the method to fund these programs, then council will need to consider other options for increasing revenue or identifying cuts. I appreciate the work our grants coordinator, Wendy Horn, has done to bring in additional dollars, but we can't use grant funding for long-term support of our programs. I'd like to add that I fully support our staff, including our first responders and all who work to keep our city safe. Our interim city administrator and myself have been attending the Oak Harbor Police Department Citizen Academy, which I hope members of our council and others in our community attend in the future. Additionally, members of our police department spent 3 days interacting with happy and grateful residents at Regency last week, and I continuously hear positive comments about their participation in our public schools. I applaud their involvement in our community. Lastly, I'd like to address the agenda item regarding the North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District. This administration has no opinion one way or the other on their pursuit of a metropolitan park district. Our only goal in bringing this back to the council is to ensure that everyone is hearing the same information. This applies to information provided to the city council and to the county commissioners, some of which was conflicting. We look forward to working in cooperation with the Island County and North Whidbey Pool Park and Rec staff on this item in the future. With that, I will turn it over to council for their comments. Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Thank you for that, Mayor. Yeah, you know, there was a couple conversations online, and it is so heartening to see that you individuals showed up for those agenda items. It means a lot. It truly does. So much of what we do up here seems to fall on deaf ears at times. So really look forward to hearing what you all have to say. And there's one agenda item later on tonight that I will be recusing from, and that's just with the understanding of public perception. And so I assure everyone in here, myself and my fellow colleagues, they hear every word you say and definitely weigh it. And it means a lot that you guys showed up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Councilmember Arms.
Thank you, Mayor, for clearing up all that agenda item. I think it is important that we're transparent, and I appreciate taking the hard work from the city, for the employees, for everybody, for addressing this and, putting it up so that we all understand it together. It clarifies everything, and I really appreciate that. Off the other agenda, we released the Little Salmons, and so that's a positive thing. We released them on the 14th, and it was quite engaging to see all the people out there and see them releasing them all. And this July, they will be having like a fundraiser for all that, and it will be at the Ace Hardware where you can dollar up. And so I'm hoping that we will be able to do this some more. So it was just a very delightful day to see people out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arms. Anyone else for the good of the order? All right, hearing nothing, we will move to the first item then. It will actually be item 6D now. So sorry for everyone that we're moving things around and confusing you, but ordinance number 1999, update to Oak Harbor Municipal Code, section 1.20.010, requirements for sale or other disposition of city real property. And here to present that item is our senior planner, Ray Lindenberg. Maybe? Here he comes.
Apologies, that moved very quickly.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for having me tonight. I am Ray Lindenberg, Senior Planner at the City of Oak Harbor, and we're going to talk a little bit about kind of the history that you already spoke about, Mayor, and some of the information that we have here that was in our staff report. So, as you mentioned, originally it came up through the review of kind of ordinances and a general process that we go through when we're taking a look at things. There are projects that may or may not happen that are related to various different things. This is anything specific right now. So if we can get that back up. Sorry, Tim. That's okay. Thank you. So we identified this potential impediment to development or transfer of city-owned properties, which may or may not include development of that property for either city projects or private projects, et cetera. And essentially, the thing is that, as you mentioned previously, there is a specific reference to the need for an election to transfer properties. And that is, as you mentioned again, unique amongst any city in the state of Washington. The language is all there. We won't read through it all. But essentially what it says is that if you're doing any type of transfer of city property that is designated as a public park, then you have to go through an election process. So again, legal staff is not aware of this requirement happening anywhere else in the state of Washington. From the 2015 ordinance that made some minor changes to this section of code, it said that the legislative, and this was from the whereas statements in that ordinance, legislative intent behind this code when it was first adopted in 1997 was to ensure that developed park property would not be sold or transferred to private parties for private use or economic gain. However, when you read through that and you go through the actual code, that intent could be circumvented by an election. So there was an out then, even with that language. Also from that 2015 whereas statement, it says from time to time developed park property or portions of such park property are required for necessary public purposes such as water, sewer, or roadway improvements. And it talks about, kind of physical improvements. Staff believes that citywide economic development can also be a necessary public purpose. And so that is another reason that we're here today. So we wanted to point out with this that there are a number of guardrails that are already built into this process. If we remove the election requirement, we still have the staff analysis of the proposal that includes all relevant department input. Planning department, parks department, legal department, everybody in the city has a chance to take a look at it, review it, and let you all know what their professional opinion is. Then there is a public hearing with notice and public comment. There's no, trying to sneak things through. There's full transparency. It's the exact same thing as what we have here tonight. There is notice given, people are here to comment on it, and we want that. It's part of the transparency. There's also a requirement for a SEPA review, which is kind of unusual, but we will do that whenever this happens. So the SEPA review includes aesthetic considerations, access to park lands, and other environmental conditions that might occur with any transfer. And then of course there are the state RCW standards that go along with that. And a lot of what happens in our code is guided by what happens at the state level. And so those state requirements and those state laws guide what we do. Moving forward. Thank you. So in our opinion, staff's opinion, if we were to remove that short portion of code that we were talking about, that last sentence of the first paragraph and the second paragraph, it will allow the city council and the city to be more nimble in our decision making. It reduces the amount of time that these types of decisions would take. You take the election out of it and it removes weeks and months out of a decision making process. The cost of an election would be borne by the city. And as was previously brought up, over $30,000 in city funds to run an election, which could be better utilized in other ways. The election would be required for any transfer, including those that would be an equal value proposition or benefit financially the city. And then there's the potential of influence of special interests, kind of short-circuiting the expertise and the decision-making skills of the city staff and the city council. A lot of people, put up yard signs, and yard signs are great. But the problem with yard signs is that when you see a whole bunch of yard signs that support one side or another, then maybe that influences the people who are voting in the election. And that to me seems kind of unfair. And it seems to short circuit the ability of our staff to properly analyze something and the city council to make that decision. And staff feels that the city council was elected to make decisions like that. So in the long run, staff believes that necessary public purposes includes economic development, it includes the ability to make decisions like this, and that our recommendation is to make the decision to remove that language that takes out the election requirement, to leave the rest of that code intact as it is, which covers all other, necessary criteria, all the guardrails that we talked about, and all of the things that exist in there now to allow the city council to make a decision, to reduce the amount of time, to increase that ability to be nimble with decision making, and to allow for the city council to make those decisions. So I'm available for any questions or comments that you might have.
Great. Ray, thank you for your presentation. At this time, I will open the public hearing, and I will turn to our city clerk to confirm that we have received public comments on this issue.
Yes, Mayor, we received a number of public comments on this issue. We'll display those slides first from people that contacted us either directly or via email or via text even.
Great, thank you.
Mayor, that concludes those that sent comments in advance. We did have a couple of comments that arrived after our deadline for inclusion in the meeting this evening, and those will be forwarded to council.
Great, thank you.
Those that have signed up to speak to this subject this evening, we will begin with Laura Renninger.
Mayor Wright, council members, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Laura Renninger. I reside at 730 Southeast Mailer Street in Oak Harbor. I vehemently oppose this proposal to change current city ordinance 1999. Not only is it a bad idea, but it's also a way to rewrite an ordinance to meet the needs of economic development. This government should not hold to the ideology that economic vitality is to be valued above all else. Our parks are not surplus city property, potentially up for grabs by a developer. The city should not cater to the desires of the business community over the needs of its citizens. Parks are set aside for use by the community. The land is most often donated by private donors to the community, with the stipulation that said land be designated as a public park. According to the ordinance, the community to whom the parkland was donated, not the city council or city staff, has the right to decide whether the parkland is to be sold or used for purposes not outlined in the original ordinance. It's only the community to whom the parkland was donated that should be able to make that decision. Reinterpreting the intent of the ordinance is simply a way for the city to circumvent the ordinance. I believe your information is wrong and that Oak Harbor is not unique in Washington by having our current ordinance in place, because I believe Spokane has one too, and that should be investigated. Also, the fact that an election is costly should have no standing in this decision-making process. Elections are a cornerstone of our democratic process. The choice of sacrificing community parks for economic development or any other cause not specifically defined in the ordinance must rest with the community via an election. Island County's Comprehensive Growth Management Plan is forecasting there will be potentially thousands more citizens housed in Oak Harbor in the future, making parks and open spaces more precious and vital to our community's well-being. I strongly urge you to vote no on this proposal. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Next on our list for this item is Kyle Renninger.
Good evening, Council, Mayor, everyone. My name is Kyle Renninger. I'm a fifth-generation Whidbey Islander. I serve on the Board of Directors of the Oak Harbor Gary Oaks Society. I'm also the Vice President of Island Thrift. I reside at 961 Northeast Pennington Loop in Coopville. First, I want to mention we've made incredible progress for our city's parks in the last couple of years, and working with Brian Smith and Brandon Cable, the new parks manager, and the other park staff has really been a breath of fresh air. It's a true pleasure to be a partner with the city to make it better. So it's troubling to be here this evening and to have to defend our parks and the right for the people to ultimately have a fair say in their disposition. The staff report, as written, and the presentation delivered this evening was, in my opinion, rather one-sided, and you should be very careful when using it when making your decision this evening. The framing of parks as impediments to economic development could not be further from the truth. They are economic drivers that also benefit our quality of life, civic interactions, community health, environmental health, community pride, and so much more. Over the past 30 years, just about since this ordinance was put in, our city has grown and flourished without once sacrificing any of our parklands. So to me, that proves they are not impediments. Incredibly concerning is the legal analysis that I believe is incorrect. I did a Google search, and in about 5 seconds, I found that Spokane, Washington, as well as outside of our state, Boise, Idaho, Colorado Springs, Colorado, Kansas City, Missouri, and the entire state of Texas require a vote of the people before disposing of parklands. There are likely many more places too. So Oak Harbor is not, we are not an outlier in requiring a vote of the people. Is democracy expensive? Yeah, it requires money, it requires sacrifice. So let's save our money by not proposing to sell our parks at all. That's an easy one to me. Oak Harbor has some of the best, most dynamic parklands of any municipality on Whidbey Island, in my opinion. And parks are some of the most special pieces of land. They are not surplus. The city holds them in public trust to steward them for present and future generations in perpetuity. A vote of the people in an election is an appropriately high litmus test for the sale, lease, or transfer of parklands. The people expect their parklands to be protected. Staff's interest to be more nimble, aka quick to sell or dispose of our parklands, is the wrong approach. Once we sell them, they are gone, likely forever. Ironically, the whole reason that the legal requirement in our code to require a vote of the people before disposing of parklands is in place since 1997 because a developer tried to acquire our Flintstone Park to build a hotel. Could you imagine if that gem of a park had been lost forever? That's why this legal protection works. We continue to enjoy what was set aside by prior generations. And history is repeating itself here. Instead of running the Hilton's proposal through the proper processes that we have in place, the city wants to weaken our park protections and end run the will of the people. To me, that is wrong. It will cause a chilling effect for those who are considering donating land and money to our parks, and can also hurt our chances to get grants to support our parklands. Think about that one. This ordinance has been reaffirmed and clarified by multiple prior councils. They knew what was right, they kept it as is, and did not allow sacrificing parks for economic development. Specifically, they specifically called that out and made sure that that was in there. So please think of the legacy that you, as our council, as our leaders, as our mayor, is creating. And I urge you as a fellow islander that loves this city to stay on the right side of history and flatly reject any proposed changes to this code. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Kyle.
Mayor, next to speak on this item is Lee Roof.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name's Lee Roof. I live on Pin Cove Road. I'm technically outside the city limits. My daughter graduated from Oak Harbor High School. My son went to the junior college here. My kids played on soccer fields in your parks for many, many years. And every time I shop or eat out in Oak Harbor, a little piece of my tax money goes to support this community, which I care about deeply. I object to the suggestion that economic development is a necessary public purpose and should not be subject to the requirement for a public vote to remove a park. This is ludicrous and hands developers carte blanche permission to gut the parks and makes mockery of the intent of the ordinance. I'm a retired physician, and I always look at people's health, mental health and physical health. And what's really interesting about parks is that there is adequate, actually voluminous research showing mental health and physical health for those people who live near parks is much higher. The amount of antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications taken by people is lower for those who live near parks, and cardiovascular health is better. People use parks, and they benefit from this use. If the city is so set upon adopting this ordinance-gutting provision, I would insist that the whole idea be placed on a ballot for the citizens to vote on, because it essentially removes parks without their approval. It essentially potentially removes parks without their approval. I am sure you would be amazed at how overwhelming the vote against such a proposal would be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Kathy Harper.
Just wanted to get my 2 cents. Kathy Harbor, 651 Southeast Bayshore Drive. Real quick, our city parks and open spaces are a legacy for future generations. We should never compromise that for temporary financial gain. Any decision about dismantling any city park is far too important to be left in the hands of only a few. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Mark. Mark, please forgive me if I've messed up your name here. Devoyne?
My name is Mark Devoyne. I live at 5101 Bayview Lane in Oak Harbor, but it's not in the city limits. I would probably am talking more about the future. About decades ago, there was a study done in Oak Harbor that said the city was going to expand towards the west, and eventually a lot of that area will be incorporated into the Oak Harbor city limits. There was a about a 3-acre trust of land in my wife's trust, and 3 years ago I gifted it to the city of Oak Harbor for a park for public use. And I certainly did not have any intention that that would ever be sold for development commercially, and I never intended it to be transferred to any place else except for the city of Oak Harbor to use as a park. And as the growth of the city, I'm assuming, is going to be going out in the west, that someday, and I probably won't be around when that area is incorporated into the city, but I do hope that when it eventually does, that property will be a park for the people to use it. And as the population of this city grows, I think there's probably should be more of a push to save land for parks for people to use, or for kids to have playgrounds, to make it a better place to live and not worry so much about commercial development. So thank you very much. I guess this National Parks is part of the National Public Works Week, as far as I'm concerned, that, you know, they worked very hard to work with this. And I appreciated the city of Oak Harbor working with me on this gift lands for the city to use in the future. Thank you.
Next is Steve Erickson.
Steve Erickson. I live on the south end for Whidbey Environmental Action Network. I'm one of those outside agitators, proudly so. But you shouldn't just dismiss those people who do not live in Oak Harbor. The increased population in Island County is going to mostly go to the urban areas now, and that's good because it makes the urban areas more vital and it keeps the rural areas rural. And a key to that is making the urban areas livable and inviting, and parks are a cornerstone of that, parks and walkable communities. Now, unfortunately, you folks have, elected officials in Oak Harbor, have some very smelly baggage, I'll call it, that you've inherited from previous councils and a previous mayor. I'm referring to the Post Office Oak Massacre. Even though you had nothing to do with that, you have inherited some of that because of your positions. You have an excellent opportunity here to turn that around and begin restoring credibility as far as people, you know, people who like parks, who like a livable environment are concerned. You can do that in three key ways. The first way, of course, is not moving forward with this proposal. I know democracy is messy. I know a professional planner or other professional may get really, feel really frustrated that their expertise is overruled by what the people want. That's what democracy looks like. The second way is, as you update your comprehensive plan, you can adopt a formal policy of no net loss of parks. You need to make it clear there'll be no net loss of parks within Oak Harbor. by area, type of park, function, and part of the city the existing park is located in. Now, I don't know another jurisdiction that's done that. Oak Harbor can really put itself on the map in terms of planning for the long term here by doing that. Third thing you can do is only allow the loss of any parkland when there's replacement before the loss occurs. That means that you've got a replacement park of the same size, type of park, and function in the same area of the lost park. And it has to be fully functional before the use of the existing park is lost. The no net loss and replacement policies and implementing regulations need to be formally adopted during the update of the city's comprehensive plan and development regulations. This will turn this now contentious issue into a positive outcome that will continue into the future. Thank you.
Next is Amanda Bullis.
Hi, thank you. I'm also from the Whidbey Environmental Action Network. My address is 1832 Newman Road, Freeland, Washington, and I am speaking on behalf of our membership that does live in Oak Harbor. The proposal to remove the requirement for public election from Oak Harbor Municipal Code 1.30.010 is unjustified and undemocratic. Firstly, the Oak Harbor staff suggests that this removal was justified because City Attorney Hillary Evans stated, quote, "I've never encountered another city requiring a vote to approve the sale of park property." I task her and city staff with producing the evidentiary proof that this is factual and accurate beyond her personal encounters. Please provide the public of Oak Harbor with a thorough assessment of all other city municipalities in the state of Washington, and across the nation for that matter, to justify the removal of this provision. In other states, such as the state of New York, all municipalities, cities, towns, etc., must have a bill passed by the state legislature to sell or dispose of any parklands in that state, with proof that the sale is justified under public trust doctrine, and must bear the burden of proof that the sale of that land supports that doctrine, which states land should, by its nature, be available for the use and enjoyment of all. The supposition that Oak Harbor staff alone has the will to sell public parkland without public vote is undemocratic, against the public interest, and disenfranchises the people of Oak Harbor. There should be greater public oversight and engagement in this process, which impacts the well-being of all Oak Harbor residents, not less. Secondly, Oak Harbor staff has proposed the amendment to this code on the basis that economic development is, quote, "a necessary public purpose akin to water, sewage, or roadway improvements as provided by the code subsection 2. Please justify to the public how a broad concept such as, quote, economic development, currently undefined by the city, is in logical justifiable relationship with the public utility functions of water, sewage, and roadway improvements. Exactly how are these two things legally and logically related? How will you measure and define economic development? Who does this economic development benefit? And lastly, how are the public benefits of this undefined economic development to be measured against the public benefit of public parks? The basis for the removal of this election provision seems unfounded and unresearched at best, and undemocratic and opportunistic at worst, and not at all in the best interest of the people of Oak Harbor. Public election for the sale and disposition of parkland is democracy at work, and honestly, the bare minimum the city of Oak Harbor could be doing to engage the public in the preservation of open spaces. The citizens of Oak Harbor deserve the public benefit of greater preservation of open spaces, especially as the city of Oak Harbor prepares to assume an influx of population. Removing the public election provision from Municipal Code 1.30.010 is a mistake. You all need to be doing much more in your city code to preserve public parks, not trying to find ways to make them easily disappear and disenfranchising voters in the process. Thank you, and I appreciate your service.
Next is Christy Jensen. Thank you, Ms. Jensen. Next is Kathy Chalfant.
Hello, my name is Kathy Chalfant. I live at 3071 Angela Lane in Oak Harbor. I want to urge you not to change the city code regarding the sale of city property as proposed in Ordinance 1999. The parks are public property, owned by the community, paid for by citizens' taxes. As such, the community should get a vote in whether they are sold. I disagree with staff's assessment that necessary public purposes includes economic development of the community as a whole. That is a staff opinion only. To many citizens, having city parks is a necessary public purpose to have a city they want to live in. I am a member of the Oak Harbor Garden Club, and our aim is to develop a beautiful city through loving care of small areas. We believe parks are important. There may be times when a sale of a park makes sense, but I believe it is arrogant to think that voting members of Oak Harbor are more likely to be swayed by outside influences than a handful of city council members. Really? You can speak for people in the future and elected officials in the future. You may be noble, but I think that's rather a lofty thing to believe. Give the citizens credit for being smart enough to evaluate a public sale and vote accordingly. And yard signs? How many of you used yard signs to get elected? I saw all of you out there with them. So you're not worthy of being elected because you swayed us with yard signs? Really, that's pretty low. The analysis that holding an election to sell or exchange property is unique among Washington jurisdictions is already weak, and that has been said over and over, so I will let that go. Lastly, I found it interesting that I printed this agenda out, and it says that it was approved by Mayor Bob Severns and City Administrator Blaine Oborn. So mistakes can be made by the city. That was very careless to have that show up when I don't think they're the mayor anymore. And so please let the citizens of Oak Harbor continue to have a voting voice. Thank you.
Mayor, that concludes those who signed up to speak on that agenda item.
Great, thank you. So before I close the public hearing, I would just request any additional public comments from those gathered here this evening that didn't sign up. If there's anybody that would like to speak, please come forward, and this is your time to do so. All right, hearing no other comments, I will close the public hearing period, and I will call upon council for their questions and comments at this time. Yes, Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Yeah, first and foremost, again, thanks to everybody for coming. It's my belief that staff and this administration are working in good faith here. So thanks for showing up with your voices and not pitchforks. This is something that we'll work through here. You know, I spoke in the workshop when this came forward, and it was with regards to the piece of land that Mark had donated to the city, or if you go all the way back to the ball fields that was donated by the Andretti family. You could go through the process to attach something to the property title, you know, saying that it had to stay on parkland forever. But with this ordinance on the books, it wasn't thought that was needed. So I was very glad that he was able to show up and speak to that. For myself, you know, I look at something when there's an ordinance on the books that says the voters need to decide something. I certainly don't think the intent of the creation of that law was council could just repeal that law. Where I'm sitting, the voters are the only people that could repeal that law. So to answer Kyle's earlier question, rhetorical question, is democracy expensive? No, I think it's priceless. So that's how I'll be voting tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Anyone else? Comments, questions? Councilmember Stuckey.
So let's assume, I don't think that's the case, but let's assume that we vote to change this. For those that have donated land to the city, can they put language in there saying that it can't be divested? I mean...
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, and it might already be on donations on titles and deeds and in paperwork that happened in the past. And it's also something that you all can consider. Maybe it's not on the paperwork. Maybe somebody's great-great-grandchild shows up and says, I don't think this is what, you know, my family would have wanted to do. And it allows you to make that decision based on analysis and testimony and all the things that go along with every decision that you make.
There was some alluding to it, which is the Hilton, which I believe has something to do with this scenario. And it's okay if we don't have the answer. That park that's in front of the proposed Hilton, is that the one impediment to, is that the impediment to that Hilton coming? To the best of our knowledge.
I can't speak for developer in that way. I can't say for certain.
Okay. I didn't know if the size of the lot was impossible with that park there or not, based on our codes.
I can't say for certain whether or not something is impossible or not.
Okay.
I don't know their thinking on that.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, our job on council is to represent the public and what the public wants. And social media, while I don't think is great for finding solutions, I do believe it is a good way to find the pulse of the community. I didn't hear anyone here asking for us to leave it like it is, and following closely online, I did not see anyone asking us to remove that part. So, I mean, if we're going to say we're going to listen to what the people want, I mean, that needs to be reflected in our vote here today. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Anyone else for the good of the order that wants to comment or question before I call for a motion? Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate everybody coming tonight and expressing their thoughts and concerns. This is definitely a tough subject and one that I've actually lost quite a bit of sleep over and trying to figure out what's best for our community, because as you guys mentioned, we are tasked with some difficult choices, right? We have to figure out future growth. We have to accommodate for future growth. We have to figure out what's best for our central business district. We have to figure out what's best for our business community. I don't think anybody that's sitting up here is looking for us to lose parkland. I don't think that's the intent here at all. And I don't think that Mr. Lindbergh is alluding to that or either. We don't have any flexibility the way I see it. And even if we wanted to do a land swap, we don't have that ability right now. Is that correct?
That is correct. If it is designated parkland.
And so we can't even do that if we wanted to see that as a possibility. So to Mr. Erickson's point, no net loss, I would agree with that 100%. You know, we don't want to lose parkland. And I don't think anybody up here intends to lose parkland. In fact, Mr. Renninger pointed out, we have made a significant investment in parks over the last few years. This council in particular has shown that parks are important to us. We have made a significant investment in parks and improving our open spaces. And we have to continue, our intent is to continue to do that. And we are representative of the people. And so if we are to do something that you don't like, you still have a voice. You have the option to vote us out. You can change, the course of how the city looks. But, Councilmember Stuckey spoke about the Hilton. And I don't know if this is predicated based upon that, but I look at that land that's at where potentially that, if we're talking about like Howell O'Malley Park, for example, we have a big park right across the street from that in Windjammer Park. We have another park right across the street from that in Flintstone Park. There are other places in our community that would benefit from green spaces, right? We don't even have that opportunity to trade that for another opportunity with our current code. It would essentially have to go to the vote of the people. We would have to ask them to do that. In the meantime, let's just say it is a very passionate subject, right? People are very passionate about it. If we lose the opportunity for a development in our central business district, where else do we have? We don't have another central business district. We don't have another area for that. There's no, so we have a park right now that is sitting in our central business district that it potentially is impeding the possibility of a development. We don't gain anything financially from trading that land as a council. We don't gain anything other than economic benefit for our community, other than an economic driver, an opportunity for jobs, an opportunity for people to come and visit our community, an opportunity for people to spend money here. We're not saying that we want to lose land. I don't think any of us wants to lose park land. And I apologize if I'm rambling, because I'm very passionate about this. I've spent the last 26 years of my life in coaching and being out in parks and encouraging people to participate in sports and being outside. You know, I'm from this community. I've been here since 1980. I share the same concerns as everybody, but we want to do what's best for our community as a whole. We're not looking to sell off parkland and line the pockets of a developer. We're looking for flexibility. We're looking for opportunities for growth, opportunities to improve our community. And if that means maybe moving a park to where it's more accessible or of better use or higher use, I don't see that as a negative, a net loss. I don't see that as it being something that is not of benefit. What I do see as potentially unbeneficial is spending $36,000 for an election on something like that when given the opportunity to make that decision. That's what have been entrusted to do as council members. That's what we were voted in to do. And so we are not removing the public process. We are not removing public input. We are not saying that any deals are going to be done behind closed doors. None of us are going to benefit financially from it. But for me, I see this as an opportunity to be flexible. You know, people have said, you know, our taxes maintain these parks, but we don't come to the people to ask what parks we're going to buy. You know, so to say that we have to go to the people because your taxes maintain the parks, well, then conversely, we should be going to you then to purchase the parks. We should be asking for, but we don't do that. We've never done that. In fact, I would say over the last 10 years, we have probably had a net gain in park space. We bought 75 acres that for Harbor Heights. We absorb parks from rural developments and stuff. So I would say we had a net gain. In fact, we just talked about purchasing at our last meeting additional green space that's down by Friend Marsh. I mean, we've invested in green space and in park space. So to paint the picture that council is going to try to, you know, sell off parkland and do that couldn't be farther from the truth, you know. And so I can't say I've made a decision one or another. There's a lot to absorb here, but I just want to address some of these concerns that we fully believe, or at least I fully believe, parks do enhance quality of life. I could 100% get behind on the comprehensive plan of a no net loss. But let's just say this parkland here, replacement in the same area, it doesn't necessarily make sense to replace the park down on Flintstone or on Bayshore Drive when we have other major parks that are down there. It would make sense potentially to replace that with a park that could use green space, with an area that could benefit from that. And that kind of language restricts us from doing that. This current ordinance restricts us from doing that. And so, again, I appreciate everybody for coming and speaking out, and you know, I will defer to the rest of the council now for your thoughts.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. Anyone else? Yes, Councilmember Arms.
I agree with Councilmember Marshall. This is a really hard choice, and we are acquiring, it looks like we're going to acquire more land. So we're not depleting it. We do think it's purposeful, and it's a sticky situation, because if it is the Hilton, and that is part of the problem, we are losing jobs, we're losing opportunities for people to come and stay instead of coming off island or going to Coopville or down south when we have it. And we don't want to lose that opportunity, but we also know that we are working hard to put our parks as pristine. We haven't taken care of them properly. We are now putting an inordinate amount of effort into taking care of our parks, our ball fields, everything that we're doing. We know, and personally I know, that I value the green space, but it is a hard sell. Like Councilmember Marshall said, if this involves that little park there, then, you know, we're going to lose. And it's a bad trade-off. I mean, nobody wins. You know, each side is like, hello, you did this. And there's two things. And this is why it's important for you to come, to share your voice. And if we allow this to go through, then you need to speak up again if something else happens. Maybe that's not fair But that's what we need to do. You know, we need to speak up at every time. You need to pay attention to us and come and listen and write us and do all those things. You know, otherwise we don't know. We appreciate you coming. I don't want to lose parks. But if it means that we're going to employ, we're going to have an opportunity for growth, and we're going to be able to put jobs in the community that pay well, we already don't have that. We're locked in where we can grow, because part of it is the airspace for the base. We love it. We love the military, but we can't put it certain places. We don't want to have to grow out any more than we have to. It's a really sticky thing that we're in right now. And I'm not sure like Councilmember Marshall, but I'm just saying, I value it. So if I say that I'm going to go along with this, do not think that I don't value it. Do not think that I do not value it. I do. I was downtown. I don't know where all you were, but I was downtown with Main Street cleaning up Pioneer and cleaning up all that space. I was down there for 5 hours pulling weeds with everybody else because I love my community. So I was actually down there doing that, on my hands and knees, pulling weeds and doing everything I could to make our downtown look great. So don't ever think that I'm not for making our city great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Arms. Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, council members, for speaking, and thank you to all of you, all the former teachers and everybody else we know, and family, friends, for coming and talking. And so I do have a question, and really it comes down to like future growth, other city property that's not parks, and we potentially want to do a land swap, so to speak, with another municipality that's within our district, such as a school district or even North Whidbey Pool Park or Rack, right? In order to build a rec center, for instance. Does this ordinance, as it states right now, would that need to go to the voters in order to do that, or?
If it involves the sale, trade, disposition of any park designated land, then yes. If it was just a piece of property that the city owned, then no.
Okay.
And this, honestly, you bring up an important point. This would apply to any kind of dispersal of property. Say, for instance, we wanted to allow a cell phone company to have a cell phone site at Harbor Heights. Would we have to go through an election to do that? And I don't honestly know the answer to that because it's kind of murky. But it is a potential out there that. So, I mean, there are things that we need to consider.
So, and thank you for that. So, for those who might wonder, Harbor Heights is out off of Oak Harbor Road and the Gun Club and 75 acres, and that's a good example. I'm not in favor of passing anything when there's murky waters, that's for sure. But I also know that we're growing. You guys said it yourselves. Over the next 20 years, we're projected to have 5,500 housing units we have to come up with and put somewhere, and we're going to grow population-wise by 50% or something is what they say. So we're looking at another 12,000 people or so, right? And so we have to think long-term in the future, and I don't want to see any parks go away and at all, but I do appreciate the suggestion for the no net loss of parks. If you take, or the third option, if you take one out, you put one in. I'm not opposed to that idea being in there as well. As we're looking at it right here and today, I'm concerned that, we don't necessarily have enough information to go on and make this. And And you're right, Oak Harbor's got history of making poor choices, and we want to make good choices that are very representative to our people that we represent here in the side of the city. And really, we represent all of North Whidbey, and really Whidbey Island as well. I do know that Spokane does transfer properties. That's why I asked the question about whether it was properties or parks. And so because they've got great Seattle, Spokane. If you haven't done it yet, go to their public libraries that are built into their school districts, inside their schools. It's a great setup, and they've built new schools and with trading with the city as well and whatnot. I was fortunate enough to be able to tour it last June when I was there for an AWC event. I had another question, but I think it's kind of lost out in my thing. Do we know if Howard Malley Park is designated park, or, I mean, is that even a?
It is.
Okay, so, in the trust and whatnot, I mean, how it was, the deed and everything, like, I mean.
So the interesting thing, the creation of Howard Malley Park resulted in the construction of a road through that property. It is the same parcel of land that the baseball fields are on. The city built a road through there and separated and segregated it off. So Howard Malley Park is a remainder parcel from the parcel across the street. So it was created through, kind of fiat. The city built a road.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting history. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you for that. I too, like many of our colleagues, this is a big enough issue and whatnot in order to essentially repeal a portion of an ordinance or make changes to it. I would like to see it put out to the voters to let them help make a decision on this process. That's how we've done things and recommended to do things in other ways. I don't like delaying things. I don't like spending that extra money either to put things out on the ballot. It does cost money. That's unfortunate that has to be a part of the process. But that, again, we talk about democracy and how things work. I'd like that more feedback. I do want to highlight, though, as well, that when this was being presented, the public hearing and public comment, so like you folks did tonight, and those that submitted online or through the email system, is a process of getting to us and letting us know what's going on. We only see it when it's a topic of great importance and a hot topic like that. There are many other topics that come across in front of us that deserve that public comment and then public involvement. And I would like to see more of that as well as involved in that. So, yeah, I think that's all I've got right now. Thank you.
Yep. All right, Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to make a motion if I could. I would like to move that we table this until no net loss is codified within our comp plan.
So we have a motion on the table to table the motion until we make a code change. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second just so that we can have discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. Now I will open it up for discussion. Councilmember Marshall.
What does that look like?
That's not a code change.
Okay.
That's a comprehensive plan amendment or part of the comprehensive plan. So that's end of next year.
That's the only question I have right now, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
I do like the idea of bringing it back with the take a park out, replace a park, so to speak. I mean, if we don't take action on this item today, it would be nice to have that brought to us so then it gives everyone around to comment again. We're not going to ask everybody, hey, what do you think about that now? But I would like to see that being brought back about possible land swap, because Councilmember Wiggins, you brought up good points. If you just wanted to swap land with, I mean, let's just say we want to swap land with the school district to preserve the soccer fields. I'm just using an extreme. We couldn't do that right now. So I do like the idea of at least bringing it back to us about land swap and then hearing what everyone else thinks about that, if that's an acceptable compromise or not. So that's what
I won't decide what's acceptable, but I will say this. The process that we're talking about here, and I've kind of lost my train, I apologize. Continue.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is an ordinance change potentially, right? An ordinance 1999. Could that language be in whatever revised ordinance that we do? So we are working on our comp plan. We can codify that in our comp plan next year. But what we're faced with currently is an ordinance, right? And could that language be, because we're striking part of it or potentially striking part of it, could that be added into the ordinance as well? Like if we were to dispose of it or that it would require a no net loss and that.
I'm not an attorney, but I think that it could possibly be done.
Play one on TV, right?
Yeah, right. I stayed at a Holiday Inn once. So it came back to me. The thing is that number one, staff is not at all in support of just selling off land willy-nilly to make money. I think the idea of doing a one-for-one or no net loss is a fantastic idea that we absolutely should work on. That being said, we have a parks element of our comprehensive plan that's been updated. There are scientific ways of determining how much park land is required per person. And that is part of the analysis that goes through that. And that was my kind of intent when my original presentation when I first came up here is staff has expertise and we have consultants that we work with and we do these things and to help you make those decisions and to help create a comprehensive plan and make good decisions for this community. And I'm invested here. I've been here almost 10 years now. I love this place. It's amazing. There's so much potential here. And so the idea that we're trying to just cash in on excess surplus property is just not the case. We're trying to make it so that, gosh, if somebody wants to do a land swap with the school district or something, that we can make that happen. Or if there is some way that somebody wants to come in and say, hey, you know what, we need to borrow a little bit of this, but we will pay, more than market value, and you can go use that elsewhere and go improve other parks. We have a lot of parks in our downtown area, as was pointed out, and some of them aren't in great shape. It would be nice to be able to get a little cash infusion to make improvements. And, it's on a one-for-one basis, that would be awesome. I would love that. I think that putting that in the code is a great idea. That being said, we can't write an ordinance right now tonight, but it's certainly a possibility.
No, I understood. And the motion is to table it, and so that's something that could be brought back forth if
For sure.
we were to.
Yeah,
to
if you have specific direction for us, we are more than willing.
Do you want to consult with the city attorney? They're online.
Is she online?
Well, we have David online, not Hillary. Hillary is not here tonight. But before we consult with David, Councilmember Wittgenstein has a comment.
Okay, so Councilmember Hoffmeyer's motion was to table it in order to put something into the comprehensive plan. I'm not in favor of that. It's too much. I'm in favor of tabling this for another date. I'm also in favor of addressing some things that could potentially be in the comprehensive plan that may need to be suggested and made some changes in that. So, I won't vote in favor of the motion because it's too complicated with the two parts. And so I'd like to call a vote on that if we could. Yep.
We can absolutely do that. Does anyone else have any comment before we call for a vote? Did you want to say anything, Councilmember Arms? All right, everyone else is good. So the motion on the table is a motion to table the motion that was presented until we can address this in recodification of the comprehensive plan. So
no, it was more specific to tabling it in order to put.
Well, I mean, yeah, I just
I just want the wording to be.
Well, she's.
If I may.
Go yes.
The motion was to table until no net loss is codified in our comprehensive plan.
Okay, so we have a motion. It was seconded.
Yep.
And now I'm going to call for the vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. 1 in favor, all opposed. 4 opposed. So that does not pass. Now, Councilmember Wittgenstein.
I'd like to make a motion just to table this for now and bring it back at a later date.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion to table and bring back at a later date. We have a second by Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Is there any discussion on this before I call for a vote? Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to hear from the attorney now, please.
Yes, good evening, council members. My name is David Galajian. I'm one of the attorneys at Kenyon Deason. Did you have a specific question you wanted me to address about this?
Yes, sir. I was wondering if we could, if the no net loss could be included as part of an ordinance.
If you're talking about putting it in the comprehensive plan, then obviously no, that's going to be a separate process. However, I think in terms of if you want to look at bringing back an ordinance, bringing back a proposed amendment to this code section, and put in there something that talks about a no net loss, I think that's feasible to do within the structure of an ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, our comprehensive plan's a year away. And so if we're going to amend the ordinance or...
Hang on, I'm breaking up here just a second.
Yeah.
If you could repeat that?
Yes, our comprehensive plan is still a year away. We're talking about an ordinance now that would repeal that language that would require a vote of the people. And I'm just wondering if part of that proposed ordinance could have the stipulation of a no net loss of parkland.
I still don't have any audio coming through on my end. I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes.
We can hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay, so the answer to your question was yes, that language can be added to the ordinance. Okay, so where are we?
We have a motion to table.
We have a motion to table, and we're in discussion. So any other discussion on this? Yes, Councilmember Hoffmeyer and Councilmember Steible.
Yeah, the only thing I wonder is if this tabling isn't specific enough. I don't want the people here to think we're trying to do an end around until they're not here. So if there was a way to incorporate that into a tabling, I'd be on board.
Are we looking for a friendly amendment? Is that what we're looking for? I would entertain a friendly amendment, for sure.
Councilmember Marshall, would you like to make a friendly amendment to the motion that's on the table?
Certainly, I would recommend a friendly amendment that we move this to our June 18th City Council meeting.
Do you want specific? Are you looking for specific language in the amendment other than?
If we're going to bring this ordinance back for discussion, whether we're going to approve or deny
it,
then we have that at. Would that give staff enough time to prepare that?
No.
Okay, so then I would say our
What about the
July.
Or July
2nd?
Yeah, it's convoluted for July. Sorry, because of the holidays.
Sure.
So it is moved, I believe, our July 11th. Yes, July 11th. It's when we have moved that council meeting.
So we can make it an action item June 26th?
Could we just say the action meeting in July, and then that way we,
Yes,
yeah,
for action.
the regular meeting in July, and then that way,
For our regular meeting in July.
Yeah, I would entertain that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so we have a friendly amendment to move this to the action meeting in July. Is that what I'm hearing? Okay. And,
Vote on the amendment.
right, but do I have a second for that? Were you seconding that?
Well, I'm entertained, I'm willing to.
Okay,
yeah.
so all then, any
starting to-
discussion before I call for a vote on that? Councilmember Stuckey. We're gonna get there.
So two things, because I see some confused looks out there. First of all, having no so let's say that we were just addressing it today like it is. Taking no vote would mean everything stays the way it is. Just so I just want to be clear. So had we not done any vote, it meant it would stay the way it is. There only would have been a vote or action if we were going to change it. So right now, if your concern was tomorrow we can go ahead and do sale of parks, that's not the case. I get the impression that we're kind of all looking more at land swap than selling. So with that, I would love for all you folks to come back and comment at that time, because I'm genuinely curious if that's a better compromise or if that's just something as the public, no, that's just not. So please do come back, because genuinely I love to hear what the feedback is on the topic of a swap as opposed to just sale. Okay, that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other comments on the friendly amendment? Yes, Ray.
What it is you want us to do. I'm getting an impression here that maybe the land swap is an okay thing for the council to approve, but if we're doing a sale, that we want to keep the election requirement there. Is that, or do we want some options? Because we can do kind of a buffet if you want also.
I would like options. Ultimately, we're trying to, this needs to be worked out so that we as a city can grow and continue to support our parks and not lose our parks in that process, and have our citizens feel supported in that process. And so if it takes a little bit of time to work it out and get it figured out, it takes a little bit of time. You know, I would apologize to the developers if it's going to hinder and drag things out for them. I'm sorry, they're not here. This is about really the long-term, where are we going to be in 50 years type deal, not where are we going to be in 10.
Yeah.
So.
Did that answer your question?
It did, thank you.
Okay, great. So now, going back to council, any other comment before I call for a vote? All right, all in favor of the friendly amendment to push this to the July action workshop, raise your right hand.
Okay.
All in favor, passes unanimously. Great, thank you.
How's the paper going to report on this one?
All right, so the original motion as it was
amended.
Are there any additional, yes?
Do you want me to read that motion?
Would you do that, please? Yes.
That motion was made by Councilmember Wittgenstein. The motion was to table and bring back at a later date, seconded by Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
What's the amended motion, though? Because we amended
The friendly amendment continues for bringing back at our regular meeting in July.
Yes.
That was seconded by
So
Councilmember
that's the
Wittgenstein.
entire motion at this point, is to table it at a later date, action meeting in July, essentially.
Yes.
Okay,
With specifying that it would be the.
Clarifying for everybody as we have now made this very confusing.
Correct.
Okay, are you good now? Are you?
I'm good, yeah.
Okay,
I'm
so,
ready to vote.
all right, all in favor, raise your right hand. All right, passes unanimously. Great, thank you.
Tara, Jim missed this.
All right, so we are going to take a 10-minute recess, and then we'll be back at 8 o'clock.
I'm going to look that up right now. I believe it is the second Tuesday of July. Okay.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for enduring us for a quick break. I'm going to attempt to pick up where we said we were going to move the next item to, and I believe we're at item 8C. Yes, I was getting there. If we could hold the conversation down, please. Thank you. Resolution number 2420, repealing resolution number 2414 regarding the creation of a North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation Metropolitan District. Give me 1 second to get there, sorry. And I will be introducing our City Attorney Hillary Evans with David Goldman, Deputy City Administrator, to present to this item.
Hi, everybody. This is Hillary. I am calling in remotely for this item, and I believe David Goldman was going to present. David, am I right?
Let me start my video. I could present. Let me start the presentation up. I thought maybe Tim was going to run it, but I'll go ahead and run it. Let's see here. All right.
The slides. Tim has the slides, so he can run them for you.
All right. Does everybody see the slides I have up?
Yes, thank you.
All right, you got it. Okay, so let me move this out of the way. All right. So this is for the repeal of Resolution 2414. Let's go on. So at the March 19th, 2024 City Council meeting, the North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District made a presentation requesting that the Oak Harbor City Council approve a resolution that would permit a proposed North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation Metropolitan District to go to the voters during the August primary. The City Council discussed the request at length. A primary theme of the discussion was that the City Council members, did not necessarily support or oppose the creation of the MPD, the Metropolitan District, but did wish to allow the voters to decide the issue. The discussion contemplated that the levy amount being requested was 25 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. So the City Council approved Resolution 24-14 on April 2nd. The Island County Board of Commissioners approved a similar resolution, C-22-24, on April 16th, 2024. So, per the state law, RCW, Revised Code of Washington, the Island County Prosecuting Attorney must prepare a concise statement description, basically the ballot language that will appear in your ballot to vote on. The prosecuting attorney shortened the ballot language to meet the word count requirement of state law. While the discussion of council may have indicated that the council did not propose to create the Metropolitan Park District, nor did it necessarily support seeking the maximum of 75 cents per thousand assessed value, the city's resolution did approve this language, and the language as written was finalized and provided to the county auditor for the ballot. No challenge was timely received. On May 2nd, 2024, the North Whidbey Pool and Park and Recreation District sent out an email to their mailing list containing language that was different than what was approved by Island County or the city. The North Whidbey Pool Park and Rec District submitted this updated language to Island County on May 7th, or they submitted it before May 7th, and on May 7th, 2024, Island County amended their position via a new resolution, like a superseding resolution, C-2524, to reflect some of those language changes, but not all, of the updated language. So this morning, the Island County Commission, Board of Commissioners repealed both resolutions, C-2224 and C-2524, at their meeting today. So given the uncertainty related to the proposed levy amount and other language in the different resolutions and the communications, the City Council may wish to repeal its approval of Resolution 2414 and seek to remove the levy from the ballot unless and until a consensus to the levy limit can be reached in other language and a new resolution may be passed by the council.
Great, thanks, David. I will now confirm that we received no public comments, or have we received public comments?
This meeting on this item, Mayor. However, we did receive, we did have people sign up this evening to speak once you've opened this.
Great, so I will now open the public hearing.
So the first we have to speak on this item is James Morrow.
Council members. Good day, Mayor Wright, council members, and thank you for hearing this message that I have for you. And also, Mr. Goldman, if you can hear me, I've looked at your work. It's very exact, so good on you. Tremendous professionalism as far as this subject is concerned. In any event, I'm James P. Morrow, residing at 475 Southeast Barrington Drive here in Oak Harbor. And I've formerly served as a commissioner and chair of North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District. My recent departure from the district was necessary to enable me to campaign vigorously and freely for the formation of a Metropolitan Park District in North Whidbey Island without the campaigning limits imposed on elected officials. Now, as a private citizen, I am leading the local effort to form a North Whidbey Metropolitan Park District. Several weeks ago, our resolution request submitted to obtain both Oak Harbor and Island County approval to enable the voters to vote on whether or not to vote to form a Metropolitan Park District, or MPD, to replace the existing North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District using existing jurisdiction borders. The county prosecutor, attorney, and staff wisely noted that the current Oak Harbor and Island County draft resolution and ordinance language did not have the same language. In order to have matching language for both, the requirement is to repeal the current resolution and replace it with, or ordinance, repeal the and replace it with appropriate matching language for both Oak Harbor and Island County. I strongly support repealing the current resolution and support a single version with the same language approved by both Island County and the Oak Harbor Council. Oak Harbor Councilor Eric Marshall and I, together with input from other informed citizens, are working with city staff to draft concise language that will be matching for both jurisdictions, city and county. This final wording will clearly define the organizational structure of the proposed future MPD. We eagerly anticipate Oak Harbor approval of a revised resolution language and also look forward to it being forwarded to the Island County Commissioners in due time. I and other citizens working to form an MPD highly appreciate your past support in passing the resolution to allow the MPD alternative to be placed on the ballot. We hope for your continued support in approving the revised ordinance language or resolution language in the upcoming weeks. So in summary, repeal the existing MPD language, revise the MPD language, replace the MPD language. Repeal, revise, replace. Thank you all for hearing our request.
Thank you, Mr. Morrow.
Next to speak is Misty Martin.
Hello, my name is Misty Martin. I am a teacher in the school district for 18 years now. And I have been an Oak Harbor resident since 2010. This has been our forever home since moving here, Navy. Okay, I can do this. All right. First of all, my audience is normally 4- and 5-year-olds, so bear with me. Okay, I have been an avid pool user since 2010. Not just using the water, also the hot tub, and it's fixed. But also, I did mommy and me classes. I taught them for quite a number of years. And the pool is, and now I swim at the pool 3 days a week, and it's really important to me. When the pool closed, I was devastated along with many community members. So I didn't just sit down. I advocated with fellow community members to help open it up by writing grants, waving signs, and just letting everybody that I know how much I love the pool and it needs to be open. With that being said, I feel that we should be moving forward to focus more on the Metropolitan District Avenue to stabilize the funding of the pool for not just now, but for our community and the future that we have. So please continue to clarify the language and for the ballot in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Next is Jamie Whitmer.
Hi, Jamie Whitmer, 95 West Troxel Road in Oak Harbor. So I'm here today not as a North Whidbey Pool Parks Recs Commissioner, but as a concerned citizen and a patron of North Whidbey Pool Parks and Rec. The community should have the choice to support or not to support the formation of a metropolitan district. In consideration of the support and concerns on how the MPD will affect taxes, please also consider the livelihood of the 50 to 75 employees unknown of what their employment status will be at the end of this levy year. The tax dollars for MPD will not only secure funding to maintain and improve the facilities and the recreational programs, but will also allow North Whidbey Pool Park and Rec to continue to employ their dedicated employees that we have. So thank you again for your time and hopefully your support to have our community to have a say in how they can enhance the quality of our life in our community.
Thank you, Ms. Whitmer.
Next is Britt Craner.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Britt Craner. I am a current commissioner and current interim chair for North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation District. I have a few concerns that have been brought up through the media and social media throughout this week and throughout this process, and there are some clarifications that I would like to make. First of all, I know that it has been insinuated that the city could absorb the pool. There are so many steps in between the failure, if this were to fail, between that and the city getting the pool, that we're not even there yet. So keep in mind, you do still have an elected board that will be making the decisions as far as the future of the pool, regardless of pass or failure for the district. As far as the ballot language is concerned, one of my biggest concerns is that when you're establishing a new tax district, or this particular kind of tax district, you have two rates that are available to you. 20 cents per every 1,000 assessed property value, or 75 cents. The language was appropriate because the language says to not exceed 75 cents. That is on the district and community members to educate voters as far as what is actually going to be assessed, right? One of my biggest concerns is that when we were in the meeting in March, Councilmember Marshall was very clear and very direct in his questioning of Ms. Evans, in which he asked, "Is this language okay?" And she said, "I do not see a problem with it." So what I'm asking of City Council, please work with us. Let's get it figured out. Let's get something on the ballot that everybody is okay with, and let's look forward to November. Thank you.
Next is Pat Harden.
Hello, I am Pat Harden, and I live on West Beach in Oak Harbor, and I am passionate about our pool, parks, and recreation department, especially the pool part. I was elected as a commissioner the same time, at the same election where our levy passed. And it was, we had worked really hard to get that 60% of the vote that we had to have and fell a little short. So ultimately, it failed twice in a row. And then we had to wait another year for another election. And because of the levy failures, we had no choice but to shut down the pool because there was no money left to operate it, and lose valuable staff. It was really heartbreaking. But a lot of people, kind of a grassroots effort, got together, and yay, the levy passed the next year. But it still took time to get the facilities up and running because, when you have no money to maintain, the machinery doesn't get better, the paint. So we started out the new staff had to be trained and certified, and we had to hire a new director. And I would say we did a really great job on that last point because we got Jay here. And, the first thing that happened, is she and her staff and a lot of volunteers began working, cleaning up, the dust-covered equipment and getting it, painting it, getting the equipment that would going, and then others had to be replaced. But reopening day finally arrived, and great celebrating, of course, to all of those that had worked forward to that. But since then, there's been, I said I'm excited about the pool, but there's been so many other new directions in addition to the pool that the park and recs have, taken over. Like, they offer summer camp now. They have little teams that, for not just for kids, but older people too. And I think it's just, things are happening that make for a better community. It's kind of like the parks that we have. We don't want to get rid of those. We want to use them, and I really like the direction, even though I haven't had much to do with the direction in the last 4 or 5 years. That could be changing.
Ms. Harden.
Oh, okay.
I'm so sorry. You're over 3 minutes now.
No, thank you. And thank you for listening. And I just hope that you will consider us favorably.
Thank you, Ms. Harden.
Next is Kyla Spruce.
Slight correction, it is Kayla Spruce. You may also know me as Kayla Sexton. I have lived in Oak Harbor for 8 years. I am a mother, a teacher, a military spouse, a coach, and a mentor in our community. I strongly urge you to work with North Whidbey Pool Parks and Recreation District to finalize the ballot language to allow the voters to decide on forming the Metropolitan Park District. This decision is crucial for our community, especially for the residents of Oak Harbor, who deserve a voice in managing our parks and recreation services. A Metropolitan Park District governed by 5 board members of commissioners elected by voters ensures our fair representation and input for all residents. Becoming a metropolitan district will ensure secure and stable funding. Let me repeat this: secure and stable funding for our parks and recreation, especially since it was noted about the closure that we experienced a couple years ago. Excuse me, have to catch up. A stable source of funding will ensure consistent support and development of our parks and recreational facilities, which will only benefit our community. Empowering our community to vote on this matter is the best way to build trust and involvement in our community. On another note, I don't want to see the city of Oak Harbor take on all of the parks and recreation. I have watched North Whidbey Pool Parks and Recreation District revive what they have done over the years with no additional funding while providing new recreational programs for our youth of all ages. I think the city should look at ways of supporting and endorsing a metropolitan park district. Lastly, when considering to take over the pool, please keep in mind that the city cannot develop facilities outside the urban growth area, which could limit future development of accessible facilities for those living outside of our city limits. Thank you for your time.
Next, let's see. Oh, nope, I take it back. That concludes those that had signed up to speak, Mayor.
Great. Thank you for your public comments, and I will just now call upon those that are present to see if there's anyone that did not sign up to give public comment that would like to give public comment at this time. All right, hearing none, I will close the public comment period, and I will call upon council for their questions and comments. Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Thank you again for everybody coming to speak and sharing with us. What's before us is really, we've already taken action previously, it doesn't match up. So what we're being asked to do is essentially repeal this tonight so it can be brought back and collaborated on so the language is unified across all districts. So that sounds like a great idea at this point in time. So
But I mean, Councilmember Stuckey.
yeah, no, I know. I'm not gonna make a motion. I just was like saying, might as well we'll do that at that point. That's
All right, thank you. Councilmember Stuckey.
Greetings. I'm going to keep my comments just to the matter at hand here. You got it. So just to clarify, there has not been new proposed language as of yet. I see a bunch of different languages in the packet, but none of those are what we want to change it to. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. If that 75 cents part has to be left in there, the up to 75 cents, and they do 25 cents, can it be switched to 75 cents without a vote of the people at any point?
So the 75, this is David Goldman. I don't know if you could see me or hear me.
We sure can.
Yeah, the 75 cents does not have to be left in there. It could be any number. It could be 75 cents, it could be 56 cents, it could be 28 cents, it could be any cent.
Okay. I do like the language that was sent on May 2nd that said, request the voters to decide whether or not to create and house the 25 cents. The original language had Island County and City of Oak Harbor jointly propose. Now, I acknowledge that was in the consent agenda that we all approved. To me, that does sound like an endorsement, though, and I think we're all kind of in agreement that that needs to be changed a little bit. Do we know how the county voted this morning? I think it was on the consent agenda. Was it just left on the consent agenda? There was no video for me to verify that.
So I watched the video. It was left on the consent agenda and it was approved. But during the chairperson, the chairperson's comments, she mentioned that it was to repeal both of the resolutions that they passed. And so they can just kind of try again and just coordinate with all parties who are interested and figure out, the proper language to move forward.
So pretty much, I mean, we have to repeal this because they need both the county and the city to agree for it to go on the ballot. Is that correct?
That's a question for Hillary.
Yeah, because the county voted to rescind it, so we have to too.
You don't have to do anything because you're the city council. But currently there is something in the auditor's possession on the ballot that conflicts with what the county recently did, and then conflicts again with the county recently did again. So it would not be wise for that ballot measure to proceed, given the inherent conflict, leaving it open for a legal challenge. If this council held steadfastly to the resolution that's been adopted previously, it would be my hunch, and I spoke to the county's lawyer, it's our assumption that that would be challenged because of the county's subsequent actions. So our advice to you is to repeal this and work with the county and do something new.
Okay, thank you so much.
Anyone else for the good of the order? Councilmember Marshall, Councilmember Arms. Councilmember Marshall, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Hillary, if the language were to say not to exceed 25 cents per thousand, is that the limit? Or could they still go up to the 75% or 75 cents without a vote of the people? I don't think that was quite answered by. So the proposed language that was approved May 7th by the Board of County Commissioners said not to exceed 25 cents per thousand. Would that be a hard cap then?
Okay, because I believe he just said that whatever the limit is in the ballot measure up to 75 cents becomes their limit.
I can help out. I inquired with the Municipal Service Resource Center on that very question, and their response was whatever the voters vote on becomes your, quote, maximum allowable levy. So if the voters vote on 75 cents, even if the new metropolitan district says we're only going to do 25 cents, they can actually raise up the levy amount in future years to the amount meeting a levy limit without a vote of the people. Means that if, for example, if the 75 cents raises, I don't know, $5.1 million, and then they vote for 25 cents once they're formed, which raises $1.7 million, they can decide at a later date, well, you know what, we need $3 million, we need $4 million, and they don't have to go back to the people as long as they're under whatever the maximum allowable levy is. So the limitation of 0.25 would cause them to have to go back to the people in order to raise more than whatever the equivalent of 0.25 is at that time.
Okay, yeah, that's how I understood it as well. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else for the good of the order? Yes, Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate the city attorney there saying we don't have to do anything because we're city council. You think I should try that when I get home? No? Okay. So
I'm not going to advise on that issue.
Thank you, Hillary. So with that said, understanding public perception, et cetera, and my role with both entities, I certainly will be recusing on this issue.
Councilmember Wittgenstein.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we repeal, was it 2414, is that right?
2420? Repealing Resolution 2414 regarding the creation of a North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation Metropolitan Park District. Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. I have a motion to repeal Resolution 2414 regarding the creation of a North Whidbey Pool Park and Recreation Metropolitan Parks District.
Second.
I have a second by Councilmember Marshall. Is there any other discussion before I call for a vote? Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Hillary and David, how soon could we bring this back forward with the revised language? Because I still very much in favor of having the people vote on this. How soon could we work up that language and have it back before us?
I believe the deadline for the November general election is the primary. So whatever date that primary is, that's what I think, but Hillary can probably clarify that.
That's a deadline. How soon could we have it back before us?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that depends on how quickly we could coordinate with the Island County Board of Commissioners to come up with a language that everybody's agreeable on.
I have to commend David and your Island County prosecuting attorney. They've both been incredibly responsive and collaborative, so I don't see a reason why we couldn't do this pretty quickly for you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? All right. All those in favor of the motion that's on the table, raise your right hand. Right, passes unanimously, 1 abstention. So 4 in favor, 1 abstention. Thank you very much. No, I gotta figure out where we're at. For what? Are we going to the annexation request? Is that where we're at? All right, so, yeah, we're already done. We move. Right, but we're past that point. There's no public comment anymore. Sorry. Sorry. All right, public hearings and meetings, annexation request from Oaktown.
Can't we, the council, vote to allow a question?
Yeah, you can.
I'd like to vote to allow a question.
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Make sure you come to the podium, though.
So, okay. Gonna bring me dinner? I'm kind of hungry. My name is Misty Martin. I live at 1585 Deer Ridge Road. I am outside of the city of Oak Harbor. Quick question: when do we get the statement to vote? You guys said no. Yes, thank you. Big word.
They'll bring it, we'll collaborate,
Mhm.
the city, the county, and the district to get the right language, and then it'll have to come back before us at a council meeting. We don't know when that date will be, because they got to get it done.
But it'll get done before the ballot, correct?
Before any deadlines, that's what we were insisting. That was what Commissioner, or Councilmember Marshall's question was.
Okay, thank you so much. Thanks.
All right, moving forward with annexation requests from Oaktown Property LLC for parcels R13326-274-1130, R13326-029101139, and R13326-281-0850, located on Oak Harbor Road, approximately 5 acres. Here to introduce this topic is our principal planner, Kak Kamak.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council, Kamak Principal Planner. So this is an annexation request. I'm here to just provide information on utilities and services to this property so that the council can decide whether you want to continue with this annexation request. This is the first step in the process. Any decision you make today doesn't mean that the property gets annexed, it just starts the proceedings. So we have a kind of a public meeting requirement with the applicant who has requested annexation, and that's what we're conducting tonight. And so if they have questions, or if you have questions, we can kind of answer those and move the annexation process along. I have a few slides to share with you on the location of these properties and some of the surrounding utilities and infrastructure. So this is 3 properties along Oak Harbor Road. The city limits are down here by Crosby, and the property, as you can see, is north of there. 3 properties. This is the property that has a structure on it, on one of its properties, and the other 2 are vacant. This is kind of an aerial photograph showing that. Just wanted to show where this is in location to other properties, other infrastructure. So we're looking at the property right over here. The city limits, this is Crosby Avenue right here, city limits end over here. And we have Goldie Road here as well. If we look at our transportation plan and look at the infrastructure here, there's road networks suggested in this area. And so if you look at that, here we have 16th Avenue to cut across and connect to Heller. We also have Rifle Road that connects to Gun Club Road. And then we also have here Aaron Road Drive that is proposed to connect all the way across to Heller. And if you notice, that alignment goes along the southern edge of the annexation property. So at any time this property develops, there'll be some right-of-way dedication that the city will require based on the current plans. Now, this is based on the 2016 transportation plan. There will be a chance for the city to look at these connections and road networks again with the transportation plan update, and some of these connections could be looked at and modified. However, this is what's in our current plan, so thought I'll share that with the council. So, again, just a exhibit from our existing transportation plan that shows the road network on the north side there. So the process here is that the applicant sends a letter, which is what they sent the letter to the mayor requesting annexation. We've scheduled this meeting within 60 days. And the decision to annex just depends on these three criteria provided by the state. Whether you want to accept the request. And I think today staff is saying that we should. There's an annexation, this property already has water. And city serves water to certain properties within the UGA. At the time of connection, we ask that they sign an agreement that at the time of annexation that they do not protest. So we already have a document that provides services, and since we're contiguous to them, it is the policy for the city to annex them into the city. The zoning for this property will be industrial if they come into the city, and they will be part of any city indebtedness that we already have. So those are the three criteria we'll look at. Staff is recommending that you proceed with the annexation. This is in the UGA. There's no reason not to. I believe that the applicant said that they are going to be online. I did not check. We can check and see if they are and if they want to make any public comment. But the recommendation today for council is to take an action to move this annexation along. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
CAC, thank you for your presentation. I will now look to Julie, our city clerk, to see if we've received any public comment on this issue.
No, Mayor, we did not receive any comment on this item.
Thank you, Julie. Is there anyone that is here with us tonight that would like to step forward and make a public comment on this issue? Now is the time to step forward. All right, hearing none, I will close the public comment period and I will turn it over to council for their questions and comments at this time. Are there any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion. Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
I'll entertain that. I move to approve amendment to no. Hang on. Can you put the proposed amendment up there?
It's just a motion to commence annexation.
Oh, like to move to commence annexation proceedings for Oaktown properties.
Second.
All right, we have a motion as presented, seconded by Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Are there any discussion on this issue before I call for a vote? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you. CAC, I'm just curious about the sewer. So there's some challenges, according to our packet, there's some challenges with providing that property with sewer. What is that potentially going to cost us? How soon, if the property owner wants to develop it industrial, how soon do we have to provide those services? What is the fiscal impact to the city for that? And I noticed that there's some language in terms of annexation that says that we could potentially ask them to prepare a fiscal impact study, which would address, our long and short-term economic impact. So
yeah, a lot of those questions can be answered at the time of development.
Okay.
So if they annex into the city and want to have a use that can be served by their current system, we probably will accommodate that. If they want to have a development that will exceed their system and they have to make modifications, then we'll have to talk about connecting to the sewer system.
Mm-hmm.
There will be a chance for the developer to take that opportunity to connect to the sewer and that way extend the sewer for their development and therefore have a latecomers agreement for others that will tie into the sewer later. However, this, as I mentioned in the report, the city also knows that this is a challenge. This is one of the few areas in the city where we don't have sewer extension. And so we've also got it in our CIP to apply for some grant money to design. So both of those allow the fact that it's in the CIP and then the development potential for this property and its connection to the sewer gives us two ways to serve this property in the long run.
And you said one of the properties currently has a building on there. Is that conforming use?
We don't know what it's being currently used. So when they come into the city, they will propose a use and then we'll determine whether it can be accommodated based on our code.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Marshall. Any other questions or comments from council? All right, hearing none, I will call for a vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
I'd like to move that we extend our time past 9 p.m.
We have a motion to go past 9 p.m. in a second. All in favor?
Can we discuss it?
Not really. Just raise your hand.
I'm not in favor of going past 9.
Okay, so we have Councilmember Marshall. Are you voting all for yes? You want to say no?
I don't want. I'm not in favor of going past.
Okay, so we have 4 yes, 1 no.
I've never seen a vote against.
All right, next item on the agenda, ordinance number 1993, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Code sections 19.66.08M, 080M, 19.67.060, and 19.20092 pertaining to appeals of land use decisions. Here to talk about that tonight is our Assistant Planner, Nolan Grunska.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. This is a proposal from staff to amend language in the Oak Harbor Municipal Code pertaining to the timeline of appeals amendments. The city's hearing examiner at a recent hearing noted that the stated appeal period in applicable section of the Oak Harbor Municipal Code did not comply with the provisions of the Land Use Petition Act of the state of Washington. In response, staff completed a comprehensive review of the Oak Harbor Municipal Code and determined that multiple sections of the code should be amended to clear up any potential internal conflicts or inconsistencies and to ensure that all appeals of land use decisions that are subject to the Land Use Petition Act are clearly provided with accurate appeal periods in the city code. Those are the 3 sections. Staff views this as largely a custodial proposal and recommends approval. I'll entertain any questions.
Great, thank you for that concise presentation. I will confirm with our city clerk that we received no public comment on this issue.
That's correct, Mayor. No comments were received.
All right, I will now ask the many of you that are here still with us tonight, if you would like to step forward and make comment on this issue. All right, hearing no public comments, I will close the public comment period and call upon council for their questions or comments at this time on this issue. Councilmember Marshall.
I move to adopt ordinance number 1993, amending Oak Harbor Municipal Code sections 19.66.080, 19.67.060, and 19.20.095 pertaining to appeals of land use decisions.
We have a motion as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Wittgenstein. Is there any further discussion from council? All right, hearing none. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. Here we go. Next item on the agenda, ordinance number 1998, adoption of a business and occupation tax. Introducing this topic tonight is our Deputy City Administrator and Finance Director, Mr. David Goldman.
Alrighty, let's get this thing going. Okay. So this item is for the adoption of a business and occupation tax. So at the February 28th, 2024 council workshop, Police Chief Slowick summarized police staffing needs. His summarization was for 4 officers, a drug detective, and a half-time receptionist. And just for context, 1 police officer currently at the beginning step is with benefits about $113,000. So we presented a couple months ago at the workshop, we presented some temporary funding options for police officers. We have the Department of Justice COPS grant, which we moved to later on in this evening to discuss. That will fund a total of $125,000 per position, spread out over 3 years. and that equates to about 47% of the entry-level officer's first year, and a decreasing percentage from there. The COPS grant is due on June 12th to the Department of Justice, so that deadline's about 3 weeks away. Also, we have the Johnson & Johnson opioid settlement. That will provide about $1.2 million, and that would fund one entry-level drug detective for about 8 years. So the cost of the public safety officers, detectives, and staff in year one, this is with their salaries and benefits and equipment, is about $625,000, and with the average increases that we've seen over the years, including the step increases that are built into the contracts, by year 8, that cost about $950,000. So there's also, besides paying for the police officers and their staff, there's some other items that require recurring revenues. One of them is that annual indigent defense expenses, those council recently approved, I think about a month or two ago, and the increase there was about $250,000 to $250,000. We don't know the total amount. Obviously, the year will be over, but that's the range of the annual increase that'll cost, and there's no recurring revenue to back that up. There's also potential debt service expense related to future parks and recreation facilities, such as the recreation center, and also marina dredging to help supplement that, because the marina itself might not be able to handle the total debt service costs of the dredging. Also, there might be debt service expenses in the future related to police stations or city hall replacements or lease payment expenses, depending on what direction the council wants to go. There's also needs for technological enhancements. There's required cybersecurity personnel that's required through CGIS. Also, just through discussions during the preliminary, budget proposals, just budget process discussions, there's potential parks administrative assistant, a grants accountant to leverage Wendy's time to get even more grants, the potential form of government changes, economic development program elements, low-income resident assistance, internship program for local students, and there's always unplanned infrastructure repairs. For example, what's going on with the city hall roof. That would really be focused on funding a reserve for replacement for facilities. I think Sandra Place tomorrow is going to go over one of the reserve for replacement funds that we have, but in the future she's going to go over the need for funding a facilities reserve for replacement. So here are some permanent funding solutions. So property tax is one example that's limited to, property tax is limited to growing by 1% plus new construction every year, or it requires a levied lid lift vote. As you know, we were successful in the levied lid lift for the fire station staffing, along with the excess levy for the bonds a couple years ago. So that is obviously one option we can do. Sales tax, the sales tax increase has leveled off. It grew from 2020 to 2023, but it's leveled off between 22 and 23. It grew mostly because of inflation and because of, the COVID situation. People were relocating to more remote places, but that's over. And most of that increase has already been met by approved bargaining agreements and just growth in just regular salaries. There is one public safety sales tax available, which we discussed last time. It would raise about $500,000 to $550,000 per year for police officers. That would have to go to the voters. It would need 50% plus one. There's also the utility tax. Right now we're at 6% or 6.25%, with that extra 0.25% going to pay for creative arts. The average utility taxes statewide for cities over $10,000 are contained in your backup, but the averages are currently higher than what we charge for utility taxes. So that's an option too. And then the four major general revenue source, the fourth one is the business and occupation tax. And about 50 cities use the business and occupation tax. So the details of B&O tax, it would only require council approval. The maximum tax rate is 0.002 of the gross annual receipts, and that equates to 1/5 of 1%. A handful of cities have higher rates, but those are grandfathered in from years ago. or voted in, because you couldn't go to the voters to go higher than .002 if the city desires. The minimum threshold required by state law is 20,000, which means that the business has to earn at least 20,000 to be, to have to pay the tax. But we've seen cities go up all the way to $1 million thresholds, and that's what we're proposing with option 2, which I'll get into in a minute. And of course, there's more information online at the Municipal Resource Service Center, or the MRSC, on this issue for research. So I had to break this up into 2 slides, but basically, this is the 50 cities I talked about, and here are their rates, and here are the names of the cities. And on the right, you'll see the tax thresholds. You'll see them go from 20,000 or 5,000 quarterly, all the way up to $1 million or 250 quarterly. Let's go to the next slide there. Just a few more cities. Here are the options that I presented last time. I think I may have presented a couple more options, but here's the 3 that we have. And just keep in mind that the ordinance is written up for option 2, but obviously it depends on council direction as to what option we're going to go forward with. And also, these are all estimates from our business license data, from information that is submitted to the state. So based on the data, it's estimated that 178 businesses, or 8.2% of all the businesses in the city, would be impacted by this tax. And the average revenue generated as estimates, so that number you see, $1.337 million, that's based on the data. But this B&O tax has exemptions and deductions, and we don't know what we're actually going to generate until people submit their tax returns with all the exemptions and deductions included. So likely that number would be the maximum amount. It would most likely be lower than that. I couldn't tell you how much lower. It really depends on when we implement and start receiving the returns. But I could tell you that, in the backup, you'll see that some of the exemptions and deductions include investments. Businesses have money and they make investments and interest off that. So that's one of the exemptions, other than, of course, banking, loan, security, and a financial services type business. It says insurance and mortgage brokers are exempt. Employees are exempt, like employees don't have to pay this tax. Obviously, sales of real estate and lease income, if the lease is 30 days or over, so that's exempt. Sales of liquor and motor vehicle fuel is exempt. Nonprofits exempt. Houses of worship daycare centers are exempt. Receipts from personal property delivered outside the state are exempt. Receipts from sales or tangible personal property and retail sales delivered outside of Oak Harbor are exempt. Credit losses, interest on investments or loans secured by mortgages or deed to trust, professional employer services, and there's a bunch of other exemptions and deductions. They're contained in sections 8.98.90 and 8.98.100 in the backup, in the actual ordinance that's in the backup. So anyway, ordinance 1998, that is, ordinance 1998 is the business and occupation tax itself, and ordinance 2000 are the administrative rules. Those rules are required by the RCW, so we had to do those two separate sections of the code. So the features from option 2, the tax rate is 0.002 or 1/5 of 1%. The tax threshold is $1 million annually or $250,000 per quarter, and we would be asking people to file per quarter, which is very common throughout the state. Various exemptions and deductions, which are listed in the backup. The implementation effective date would be July 1st, 2024. And the tax due date for the initial period, so we can set up a whole system to implement this and collect the taxes. The tax due date for the last half of this year would be January 31st, 2025. And also a minimum of 30 days notice is required before this can take effect. So today is May 21st. That's more than 30-day notice before July 1st. So the due date after the initial period, it would be the end of the month following the quarter. There's required late fees, underpayment, not unpayment, underpayment and interest, which varies depending on, the section of the state law we have to follow. Electronic payments are preferred. There would be paper available, but, we think that the businesses that would be subject to this tax would be big enough to probably also prefer electronic payments as well instead of just using paper forms, but they'll be available. And also, in order to ease everybody's, both the business owners and the paperwork on staff, businesses under the $1 million threshold can submit an exemption from filing a form. You'd have to file a tax return with zero. But instead of even doing that, asking people to do that every quarter, they can submit a form one time for an exemption from filing the taxes. And if such time they do find themselves over the threshold, then they'd have to start filing the taxes. So that'll save everybody a lot of time and paperwork. And there's also administrative appeals processes included as well. So with that, it's just open for discussion, and I have suggested motions on the next slide. And I guess it's a public hearing, so we'd have to open it for public hearing.
Great, thank you, David. At this time, I will open the public hearing, and I will confirm with our city clerk that we have received no public comment on this issue.
Mayor, we did receive one public comment. We thought perhaps the public comment had been intended for another item this evening, but they did identify it as this one. And yeah, it's just one single slide, Tim.
Julie, this is Mikhail.
Yes, Mikhail.
That comment was actually for ordinance 1993.
Oh, thank you. You are correct. It is for 1993. Thank you. I jumped the gun. So, Mayor, we did not receive public comment on this particular ordinance. Thank you.
All right, so I will turn to our audience and see if there's anyone here this evening that would like to speak to this issue. Hearing no comments, I will close public comment period and turn it over to council for their comments and questions. Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
I don't like it. I don't like increasing a tax to, handle our basic obligation to our citizenry. However, very few things that I vote for up here have the opportunity to save someone's life. And we do desperately need more officers, et cetera. If I'm in a position to break a tie, I could accept option one myself.
Thank you, Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Any other question? Yes, Councilmember Stuckey.
Yeah, first couple thoughts. One, to address your comments earlier about social media, which you're gracious and not name me, but I know I'm the one we're talking about here because I did post on social media about the B&O tax. I felt like it was something that was flying a little under the radar, and it blew up. And, there were some unintended consequences that were negative towards our police department. That was on me, Chief Sloak. I apologize for that, and to your staff on what I started there. I may not fully agree about increasing the police force, but I certainly do not agree with any of the negative comments that we would put towards your department. So I apologize for that, and for any other staff who may have been affected. That being said, related to this in the future, I do think social media is a good tool to get information out there. I really don't think this B&O tax would have blown up to anything had it not been on social media. I mean, the idea of we have a meeting, you can subscribe to the agenda, it's just not good enough anymore. So in the future, if possible, I know we're getting a communications director, maybe something to keep in mind when there is a controversial issue, to have that information posted straight from the city so it takes out any bias or anything like that. Still gets the information out to the public, and you could turn comments off. But that way people see it and know. So something to keep in mind. So I like numbers, as I've said many times. And I saw many of the comments on social media regarding people saying they would move their businesses, how much this would affect them. I think the math's a little off. So I did a little math myself. And Mr. Goldman, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this. So let's take the big businesses here, first of all. If we'd go with option one, okay, that's 27 or 28 businesses. I think those fall into two camps. The first one is going to be your major corporations: Walmart, Home Depot, Safeway. I bought my wife some Apple AirPods for Mother's Day, and they cost me $180. The B&O tax on that would be 36 cents. I went to Hagen this morning, took a look at a gallon of milk, and that was $3.49. The increase to that wouldn't even be a cent. I assume it would be raised to a cent. The idea that on those items that's going to be passed on to the consumer, I don't quite buy. Walmart is not going to suddenly make those AirPods $180.36, and I don't think Hagen's is going to make their milk from $3.49 to $3.50, and if they did, I don't think a penny is stopping anyone from buying it. The other people I think would be affected in that option one, though, would be contractors. Again, a little math. I do a $200,000 remodel in my home. I believe that would be a $400 increase. If I was looking to do a $200,000 remodel in my home, I don't think $400 would be the make or break for me. That being said, I do like the idea of putting out a survey to those 27 businesses in option one. I acknowledge most probably won't return it. I don't think Walmart, I don't think Hagen, I don't think Home Depot are going to return it, but at least we've given them the option. And we put that survey out. If we get no opposition or little opposition, maybe that's something we could pursue as far as option one. I don't think Hagen's is leaving. I don't think contractors are going to pull their businesses, but we've at least given them their option to say as such. Another thing that kind of surprised me from the social media activity was the amount of people who actually like the idea of a levy as opposed to a B&O tax. Might be something worth exploring as well, but if we vote today to all of a sudden put a B&O tax on businesses that gross over $1 million, I think there's going to be a whole lot of pushback, and I don't think that that is the right way to go at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Stuckey. Anyone else? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Just some questions and comments, I guess. Let me start by saying that I 100% support our police department and the need for additional officers. I couldn't agree with that more, that we need to find a way to fund additional officers. Do I necessarily think this is the right way to go? Not particularly. And I guess the reason why I guess I'll start with a question to you, Mr. Goldman, is we were talking about gross sales over $1 million, right? So the $1 million is the threshold. So at $1 million and one, we're looking at the 0.002 on that $1, correct?
The terminology is gross receipts, but the rest of it, yes, the rest of it's correct.
Okay. So that first $1 million is not taxed.
Nope.
For this B&O tax, okay. I guess the issue I have is putting public safety on the backs of such a small percentage of businesses. And, we talk a number of times about affordable housing, how we're going to make, housing affordable. If we make it more expensive to do business here, are we going to do business here, first of all? We have some businesses, I mentioned last time we have a business that's looking to consolidate their operations. Well, is this going to be a catalyst that, if we're going to build another building somewhere else, why don't we look at a place that doesn't have this tax? And looking at the list that you provided, 50 cities is less than a quarter of what we have in the entire state. So there's lots of opportunities for a business like that to take their business somewhere else where they wouldn't be subjected to this B&O tax. I would like to get some more information. I too would kind of like to see a business climate survey, maybe engage our Chamber of Commerce to see how this would affect some of their membership. We have an economic development director who did a business climate survey. I would like to know how this could potentially affect us, because what we don't want to do is we want to increase public safety, but we don't want to drive away jobs, and we don't want to drive away sales tax revenue. We don't want to have unintended consequences by trying to do something good. We have a very intelligent voter base, I believe, that have shown that if we show them a need, transportation benefit district, the fire levy, we have shown. Our voters have shown that if we can show a genuine need and a return on investment, they're going to support it. And so Is 1% the most that we could go to on a public safety sales tax?
It would be 0.1 for the
0.1.
city, and if the county did it, we can go up to 0.3.
But we
But 0.1
couldn't go,
would be
we
more-
couldn't say we wanted to go above that if we wanted to do public safety.
They tried to change the law last session to go above that, but it failed.
Okay.
So 0.1% is what the law is now, and it has to go to the voters.
So I guess my last concern with this is, we look at the other opportunities that we could do with this kind of funding. But, I too like numbers. If we just took the lowest of the indigent defense at 215, and we have the full rate for the officers at 950, we're talking about 1,165,000. At most, with option 2, we were looking at 1,337,000. So that leaves us at with 172. That's not a lot for a city to do with, unfortunately. I mean, personally, I could do a lot with that, but as a city, there's not a lot that we could do with that. So I hate to try to sell this idea that we could do a ton of things with this money when the reality is by the time in 8 years, by the time we increase officer wages and that kind of stuff, we're looking at using up almost that entire part. I would like to see other options, unfortunately. I'm not trying to put this off, but I would like to explore some other options. Just kind of seems like, hey, this is what we can do, and let's go for it. And, I'm not quite ready to pull that trigger yet. No offense. Yeah.
All done? Okay, Councilmember Arms, yes.
I too support the police, but I also understand there's no easy solution. And this is the problem. Who are you going to give it to? And maybe the citizens would vote. But if you just got your recent statement from your happy lender, they have upped the hazardous insurance by $300. And they've also upped the amount you're paying on your mortgage. And so now we are in a precarious position. They already feel they're overtaxed. They already are upset. And there's no easy solution. I don't like being overtaxed either. But where are we going to go? We keep asking them for more and more. And it's an important thing that we're asking. I mean, and we're going to have to make a tough decision. Maybe not today, but we're going to happen. I just had a cardiac looking at I'm like, and what? And this is what, even if people own their home, everything is going up. And they're already upset because we've never fixed the sewer rates. Just like we've been talking about doing things in the past, it comes to haunt us now when we need it more than ever. We've lost some of that trust. I don't know what to do either. I mean, I don't really like the B&O tax, but, somebody's got to pony up sometime, and we keep asking the citizens, and I don't know how much more they're going to take. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe we need a survey. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Councilmember Arms. Councilmember Wittgenstein.
I concur with, let's get a pulse on the businesses, especially in those higher end, and see where that goes. Doesn't look like it's enough money anyways in the long run. I think we got to get a little bit more creative. I don't know what that is, but I think there's got to be a way to do this without continuing to raise and just put it on business owners. As a business owner, and I don't fit into that piece, I wouldn't be subjected to it. But I like having police officers, and I wouldn't mind paying a little bit extra if it needed to in that regard, coming out of the business as well. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the solution is, but I think there's still a little bit more work that needs to be done to do it. And at the same time, I don't want to lose any grants either. So, I mean, we're in a pickle. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Councilmember Wittgenstein. All right, we've heard from everyone. Is there any other comment before, or I will entertain a motion on this or not?
Yeah, actually, I have some comments.
Okay.
So I just need a little clarification on where to go from here, because I did present some options in the agenda bill regarding possible utility taxes or that public safety sales tax or levy lid lift. And there's options here in the business occupation tax. There's different thresholds. So I'm just a little confused as to what direction the city council wants us to pursue. And also for the business climate survey, I'm not exactly sure what questions to include in the survey as well, if we're going to go down that route.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, a couple of things. You know, year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I think it was, when we expanded the Park and Rec Department, you know, I had mentioned that I thought we might be backing ourselves in a corner with regards to having enough officers, and that was kind of what precipitated and led to this conversation with us finding out that, yes, in fact, we have less officers than we had in '98. So once a decision's made, council kind of needs to get behind it. So, you know, being creative might mean making cuts and laying people off, and that wasn't what council decided. So, you know, as far as a sales tax or all this other stuff, that's worse and affects more people. So, I guess I don't know what council's going to decide and give to you. However, when this came through a workshop, council seemed to give you quite a few thumbs up, and maybe that's because there's not a full council here tonight. Maybe that changes the math. Anyway, however, if you could load the proposed motion, I would like to look at that at least.
Okay, let me get that up. All right, where is it? Share screen. There we go. It's pretty straightforward.
So with this motion, where would option 1, 2, 3, or 3 go?
Oh, the ordinance is written for option 2. However, if we wanted to go to option 1, we can easily make this motion, and then with the contingent on option 1, and then we can revise the ordinance with a $5 million threshold.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I move to approve ordinance 1998, amending Title III of the Oak Harbor Municipal Code to add a new chapter 3.98 pertaining to the adoption of a business and occupation tax pertaining to option 1.
Okay, so we have a motion as presented by Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Do I have a second? Okay, hang on a second. We have a motion on the table. Okay, so we have a motion and no second, so it's gonna die here.
That's what happens.
All right, so you have a question, Councilmember Arms.
Sorry. I have a question for Chief Slovic. When is the grant due, and do we have any time left?
So the grant is due for the COBS grant, is due on June 12th. The grant is not contingent on us already knowing that there is funding available to staff those positions for 4 years. We can apply for that grant and still work out the funding.
Okay, that's a great idea. Okay.
Right, so but keep in mind that we can't move forward with hiring people and moving forward in a direction where we don't have a revolving funding source. So that doesn't fix all of this. Okay, so just making sure we're all on the same page. Councilmember Stuckey.
So what happens if we vote to apply for the grant? Let's say we get the grant. We don't figure out the funding source. How bad does it look if we get the grant and say, hey, it didn't work out?
So, right, if we receive the grant and then we don't accept the grant, we're not eligible to apply for the grant the following year.
So for a year, and obviously it doesn't look great by those evaluating the grants in future years.
Right, if we accept the grant and we don't follow through with funding those positions for that 4-year period, we're then ineligible for accepting COPS grants for, I believe it's like a 5-year period, which has happened in the past.
Sure. So I guess for me, I still like the idea of a survey on those 27 businesses, or, I mean, we're talking about essentially increasing patrol by 25%, are we not? I mean, that's one extra officer per shift, correct? That's what's being proposed. And a drug detective and.
20%. Yeah, it's a 20% increase in patrol.
Okay.
And then it's, and then adding a drug detective and then a part-time records person.
So, I mean, it's a major staffing change. And, you know, be it a sales tax, be it a levy, it should be something that, if we're not going to do one of these options, that the people decide. I mean, the fire department did it. It passed. Make the argument to the people and see if they go for it. We'll see. I mean, that doesn't give a lot of direction, but that's kind of how my thoughts are.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
So on that, if there was one way to give staff a clear direction, is council, does council want to go out for that survey and bring this back? Yeah? So is that where we're at? I like it. Yep.
Okay, so you're wanting us to do, or you're wanting staff to do a survey. Are you going to give them any kind of parameters around that survey? What are you looking for with that survey? Because they don't really have any direction with what you're looking for. Councilmember Stuckey.
I guess two thoughts. One, I would say getting our Chamber of Commerce involved would be a good idea. I don't know how many of the big name, the 27 businesses are members of Chamber of Commerce, but I think working with the Chamber of Commerce for that survey, giving us a suggestion and letting us modify it from there. If you're asking the 5 of us sitting up here, hey, what questions do you want right now? I don't think you're going to get a good answer. Let's go ahead, work with the Chamber, have a proposal to us, make sure we look it over. We remember when this kind of bit us before with the survey with the sculpture, and I don't want to see that happen again. So we need to look at that survey, but I would prefer a proposal being put towards us and then us modifying it from there in a workshop. Sooner rather than later, of course.
Yes.
So, Mayor, one of my questions is that, yes, we would, go through and create the questions and bring them forward to council. We did that with one of the last surveys we did. My other question, though, is when we're talking about the survey, one of the other items that has come up before is the percentage of responses. So I am concerned that staff will do this work and then there's going to be a whole discussion, whether it's in the community or here at council, about we didn't get the percentage expected to respond, especially when we're talking about the big box stores that are not going to respond to potentially a survey from a source. And also, the other thing is there's a lot of direct communication with that, because nowadays with cybersecurity, QR codes, survey links, things like that are also suspicious for people. So there's a lot of outreach involved. So I just want to be prepared for that as we talk about this and what the expectation is.
Councilmember Stuckey.
So important to remember too, I mean, thankfully, I keep saying 27, it might be 27, 28, that was in option 1. But that's I would think a manageable amount to contact fairly directly as opposed to the second option. And I do acknowledge, I would imagine you'll mostly get responses from the contractors, more so than you will Walmart, Home Depot, and Hagen's. But at least at that point, if there's any complaints about it later, you can say, we sent you a survey and you did not respond. I understand it's response from the community when you send out and ask for the community to come out and they don't respond. But I think with 27 businesses, we could probably follow up with a phone call, knowing that, I know it gets tricky, it goes to like a general manager, and that general manager may say, hey, I need to send this to corporate or something like that. And they may not even do that, but at least we can say, we gave them the option and there was no objection.
Okay, as long as council's okay with that, because we recently had, last year, we did a survey where it was required by the state related to our clean water facility, and literally a staff person had to go door to door to meet those managed requirements, and it was a very small number of businesses. So I just want to set those expectations and make sure we're on the same page, so thank you.
Is it a huge burden for staff to go door to door to those 27? Is that unmanageable?
It's just, it means they're not doing other tasks that you have
Sure.
on your list in order to address that. So as long as we understand, that's potentially several days, a week, 2 weeks, I don't know, that might be dedicated to this activity. So that's all, I just want to make sure that we're all clear.
It also is not the same process at all either, because these are not just people we're knocking on a door. This is going to be
Correct.
corporate headquarters that we're having to work through. They're usually back east or in the Midwest somewhere.
But
So-
maybe the chamber could help us out.
Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess for me, the reason why I wouldn't second option one is it doesn't give us even what we're looking for. I mean, we're talking about 27 businesses, but we're only talking about $793,000, and we've already been told that we're going to need 950 just for the police portion of it alone. And so if we want to do anything beyond that, we have to look beyond option one. You know, we have to be looking at option two at a minimum to be equitable. I mean, if we're not going to put it on the backs of just these select businesses, we really should be doing, if we're going to do a B&O, we should do option three.
Okay, so I hear you.
Yeah, so.
And option one died, so if you're willing to put forth an option.
I'm not yet. So
Okay.
what I want to say to Mr. Goldman is he had asked for direction. I personally would like to see, this is something that affects our entire community, not just our business community, but everybody. So if we are, and I know this is not going to be popular, but if we are lower at our utility percentages, then what could we possibly generate revenue-wise if we were to increase that? Or you had mentioned a levy lid lift. What does that look like? How long would that be a funding mechanism for, and would that get us to what we're trying to achieve? I mean, for me, the biggest thing is we're putting this back on the backs of our businesses when this is a community problem. This is something that we should all be addressing, not just simply our business owners. So that would be the direction I would like to see for Mr. Goldman is if we were to increase our utility tax rates. I mean, we are at 6.25 when most other places are 10.46 for water, 10.10 for sewer, 9.3 for solid waste, and we're 6.25 across the board. So there is some, you know, if we're going to talk about the opportunity to do what other municipalities are doing, that is one place that we could potentially look at, and that puts it on everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Goldman, can I ask you a question? Where do we rank in the state as far as our utility rate?
Well, good question. I have every city up on my screen that has over 10,000 population. There's a lot of small towns I didn't include, but as far as the rank goes, oh boy, how do I rank this? Let me just sort this. It's like one of these things I could sort, right? Oh no, it's a pivot table. Oh, maybe I can do it. No. Let me just copy it. The bottom line is, while I'm doing this, to answer Councilmember Marshall's question to how much we can raise from the utility rate change, each 1% that we increase the utility rate equals $248,000. And tomorrow during the workshop, I'm actually going to present an item that might possibly be able to decrease our utility rates. So possibly that item, decreasing the utility rates, but with increasing the utility tax, might still provide us savings for the residents and the business owners overall, but be able to generate some funds for the general funds. In the meantime, let me just sort this out. Okay, I'm just going to use water. Let me use water, smallest to largest. Okay. So, how many are there? Let me check this out. Why aren't these other cities even up here? All right. So, 45. So, of the cities in Washington that are over 10,000 population, there's 45 of them. And we are the 13th lowest out of that 45 for water. For wastewater, let me do that same sort. We are, let's see, for wastewater, it's sewer, 45 as well, and we're our number 20 lowest. Yeah, 20 lowest. So as far as taxes goes, there you go. We're in the lower half.
Councilmember Arms.
Okay, what happened with the sewer, the locals, because we never raised it before, really, and we put, all of a sudden they get the shock and awe, and we didn't until recently encourage the contractors to really contribute much, and we put it all back on the citizens. And so I don't like the B&O tax, but we keep putting it on the citizens, you know, and after a while, they kind of want somebody else to kind of pick it up. And the other question I have for the chief is, if we don't do the thing this year, can we do it next year for police? Is it every year, the grant?
It's not guaranteed every year, so it all depends on federal funding. It has been every year for the last few years, but it's not guaranteed.
Okay, thanks.
And also, you can't supplant funding, so if we go ahead and hire those cops, we're no longer eligible to get the grant.
Okie dokie, so any other discussion, or is this just dead and we're gonna abandon the issue? Because we had a motion, it wasn't seconded, so it died. Do I hear another motion that somebody would like to present? Issue's abandoned, we'll move on. All right. Next item is contract and agreement, staff report for contracts and agreements, items B, C, and D related to the Department of Ecology Integrated Planning Grant. Here to present on that issue is Steve Schuler, our Public Works Director, and David Kuhl, Development Services Director, to overview the 3 related agreements for environmental cleanup.
Do you want to stand up here? Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the Central Development Area. This is a project that's been in the works since last summer, and this project, we slowed it down a little bit so that the comprehensive plan could get out in front of it. The comprehensive plan, as you know, has been started now. As you remember from your joint workshop with the county commissioners, Clay White and Kimley Horn were there to introduce the comprehensive plan, and we've since started the buildable lands analysis. So we now feel comfortable in moving forward with the CDA. So this, of course, is the top goal of the City Council, as you remember. Tonight's integrated planning project for redevelopment of the CDA will generally come, that is, follow the analysis and conclusions of the 25 comprehensive plan. Any Oak Harbor Municipal Code changes, sub-area plans within the CDA will take place in 2025 or later, and that's largely after the 25 plan is finished. Some work will be started this summer as well as this fall that will help to inform the comprehensive plan, and is what Steve will go into some of the detailed studies with these consultants that we're talking about hiring. The Central Development Area has potential up zones that will follow the buildable lands analysis, and that would be performed through the Kimley Horn contract. With this land analysis, we will be able to see where additional density can be accommodated. It could be somewhere along Midway, it could be elsewhere in the neighborhoods, it could be downtown. The comprehensive plan map will show land use changes, and after that, the CDA will guide zoning changes on parcels that are recommended in the buildable lands analysis. So the buildable lands analysis will come in and try and figure out where we have more capacity, and then we'll figure out how to add more density to those areas. The comprehensive plan also deals with the housing units. The Department of Commerce is requiring an affordable housing component to be required as part of this housing numbers. So as you know, you've heard the number, 5,500 housing units is what we're going to need in the city. And a lot of those have to be geared towards affordable housing. So we're calculating based on the 0 to 50% area of people's income, 50 to 80%, 80 to 100%, and 120%. So there's a lot of different targets we need to hit with affordable housing in this project. And in the CDA is where we're going to see a lot of this happen. There's many new requirements that are going to be established with these new units, so just want to make sure that you're aware of that before we go too far. Another target that we have is the multifamily tax exemption program. You might remember that from last year, and we came through and presented that to you. The contractor is still on board through October, and that would add more density in the CDA. and provide a way for us to incentivize developers to actually build affordable housing. So the CDA could be a very big animal for us to get affordable housing built. Here's your schedule. Schedule will be 25 comp plan, buildable lands analysis. That'll be done in the spring right now and the summer this year. And then the integrated planning public workshops will be no sooner than the fall of 2024. This is your central development area. The lines are a little fuzzy. We've moved the lines around a lot so that we'll have more flexibility. But if you look at this area here in green, that's all your residential areas along with commercial along Highway 20. This purple area in here is your downtown, and we've made it a little bit flexible to go across to the west side of Highway 20. Down here, of course, is your marina. And then up in here was an area that's nicknamed Chimes Corner, but it really could be nicknamed Midway or anything else you want to come up with. That's just a nickname that we've come up with for now. So those are your three areas. I recall this came up in our last workshop we had. Folks were concerned about the Midway-Whidbey intersection and the zoning that goes in there. This planning effort will just be a large-scale planning effort to find general areas to put more density. It's not actually going to go in and rezone somebody's property right away. So one last piece that I have, and then Steve's going to take over with his part, the relation to the Marina redevelopment plan. As you recall, in prior years' budgets, we were trying to tie downtown to the marina, and we still are with this planning effort along the waterfront. But at this time, we think that the marina land use redevelopment plan should be included in a future plan, a future planning project that's currently unfunded. The marina presently is conducting primary design and cost estimates for the dredging underneath the docks. Future planning will also include alternatives for replacement of the existing docks. It'll include alternatives for power systems and replacement of the breakwater and dredging. So a lot of that is something that's beyond the scope of the CDA. So that would be something that the marina group would come up with later. The only thing that we would get involved later after this would be the upland residential uses, upland from the marina, and we see that again in a future phase. There's some complexities there with the Navy's underlying rights to marina properties, other complexities as to whether or not the Washington State Department of Natural Resources has some rights to some of this land. So those would be questions we would answer in that future phase. So Steve will now take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cool. Yes, so tonight we're going to be looking at three action items. One is to improve a consulting agreement with Fairlawn Consulting to do the environmental remediation studies. A second is with Dahlin Group to do the architectural renderings and studies for these areas. And third is with a nonprofit, the Center for Creative Land Recycling, that's funded through the federal EPA for a lot of their funds. And we'll take a look at all three quickly here. All right, as we talked to you in January, we told you that we got a $200,000 grant through Ecology to study redevelopment of this area. And so, and again, I want to extend appreciation to Wendy Horn, who's been wonderful to work with and helping us get this funding. We since then have worked with this nonprofit, CCLR or C-Clear, to get another $100,000. So now we have $300,000 to move this project forward. There's really 5 efforts we're taking a look at. One is this environmental remediation study on our 2 parcels down on Pioneer. Second is this integrated planning that's not only for those properties, but also for downtown and also for the entire central development area. So it's looking at not just your properties, but the neighborhood that would affect the values of your properties. We're going to be doing economic and market analysis and public workshops, again, no sooner than the fall of this year. And then we were able to get grant and project administration. So for example, my time putting this together is getting reimbursed up to $20,000 is reimbursing staff's time. And then lastly, $5,000 to do building hazardous materials in the 2 existing buildings that we own. As you all recall, here's our city-owned parcels. They're on Pioneer and Midway. on Bay Shore, and it's about 1.1 acres. The environmental investigation would install up to 5 monitoring wells. To the contamination we can see from our feasibility study when we purchased the property is in the groundwater, and so we would install monitoring wells to monitor that over a number of quarters and really see where that contamination is coming from. We know most of it appears to be from gas stations and also dry cleaners and also PFAS. Number 2 is the integrated planning, and this is really exciting. So we will take a look at our 1.1 acres. We're going to look at the existing zoning, which allows 5-story buildings, and so we'll do renderings of that. We're going to be looking at different parking requirement and how that affects redevelopment of that parcel. And we're going to also look at connecting those parcels to the waterfront. Again, right now our code turns everything toward Pioneer, but we want to be able to take advantage of this beautiful waterfront and really take a look at requiring retail and public uses along Bay Shore and the waterfront. Secondly, we're going to look at about an 80-acre area, and this is the downtown neighborhood, right, that David went over. And so we're going to look at that also, because it's about reinvigorating the entire downtown. And so we'll do 3D renderings and be able to show people what a potential downtown could look at like, both with different types of parking requirements and how that would affect things. And you'll often see this. We showed you one that was just done for down in Mukilteo on their waterfront that they had just issued. And then lastly, we're going to look at this entire central development area, which is again 500 acres, bound roughly by SR 20, Midway, and the waterfront. And we will take a look at things like Chimes Corner and how we connect those areas together, possibly with a pedestrian-focused street. Third, we've got economic development and market feasibility done by C-Clear. We're very excited about this. And also public workshops to help bring the public together and really analyze these and bring people into the engagement. And then I just want to go back and spend a little time on this. Of the $300,000, all of this is a grant funding except for $10,000. C-Clear would like us to pay about 10% of the $100,000 in work that they're providing, or about $10,000. Again, $20,000 in reimbursement for city staff time. And then one of the last things I want to bring up is we have 2 buildings down there, the gas station and what people often call the tattoo building. If you have another name for it, let me know. And we purchased those about 1.5 years ago. Based on their age and poor condition, staff is recommending that we do demolish both those buildings. I know, I've rented a bunch of people who have looked at them, and they're always imagining something that could be done there, right, as they've sat there vacant for a number of years. They're starting to become more and more of a liability for the city as they sit there. We did have people break in. As you go into those buildings, the stench from the bird poop and everything is overwhelming. We did find asbestos, again, that was paid for by the grant, but the removal part and the demolition would be a city cost. It's not paid for by these grants. So it would be about $13,000 for us to remove the asbestos. Then we could have in-house staff do the actual demolition. And then, very rough estimate, we think it'd be about $25,000, could be less, to dispose of both buildings and haul that off to a concrete recycler and also to the landfill. So there's just a little bit on language. What this grant is often called a Brownsfield grant, and many of you may be very familiar with that. So Brownsfield is developed or abandoned land available for new buildings that is contaminated, and that contamination typically is halted redevelopment of those parcels. So that's exactly what we have down there on Bay Shore that we own. You will hear the word gray field site. That's typically a previously developed site, like a big, large parking lot that is being underutilized, and we have those obviously in our city. And then lastly, you'll hear about a greenfield site, and that's like, a farm or a forest that's then converted to development. So if you kind of hear those, as we start throwing those around this year, you'll kind of know that vocabulary. Very briefly, as we talked about in January, this has been a community vision for decades. There was a report done in 1990, there was a report done in 2000, a report done in 2010. They all see reinvigoration, upzoning, which has been done of this downtown area and areas between that and the marina and the midtown. And now we have $300,000 in grants to help lead us toward action. So council was very good in asking questions about how do we know this isn't just going to be another plan? We've been planning for 30 years. How do we know this time is different? And I wanted to put a little bit more of a sharper answer on that, having you talk about that. Number one, I don't think we are guaranteed success. And so a few things we need. Number one, we really need to think about this as a long haul. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. This is something that needs to remain a priority for years as council members change, as we have elections, as community members come in. And then also it needs to be a community-wide vision, right? We really need to use this engagement and the work with the comp plan to really make sure that the community is aware of this, work with our newspapers, work with our wonderful community outreach programs. And then we need to have creativity and foresight. This can't be something, this is going to be a heavy lift. And then lastly, we need collaboration on this. There's going to be a lot of differences in opinion, but those four things are really going to be critical for us to move forward. And so tonight, Hillary Evans, our wonderful city attorney, has recommended that we do 3 separate motions. And so we'll go through those, but if there's any questions overall, Mr. Cool and I are able to answer those now, or we can answer them during any of the motions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schuler. We'll bite this off one bite at a time from the elephant. So I'm going to open up public comment on this issue, and I'm going to verify with Julie that we received no public comment on this issue.
That's correct, Mayor. No comment was received.
And specifically, I'm talking about the staff report for contracts and agreements. Okay. And anyone here this evening that wants to make public comment? The whole 2 of you that are left. 3, sorry, I didn't see the one back there. All right, hearing no public comment, I'm going to close public comment and call upon council for their questions or comments on this issue. All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion for, yes.
One by one, right? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to authorize the mayor to approve a professional service agreement for a remedial investigation feasibility study by Farallon Consulting, not to exceed $107,000.
Second.
We have a motion as presented, seconded by Councilmember Hoffmeyer. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Yes, Councilmember Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe this is in the next ones, but where does the $10,000 come from? Is that out of the general fund? Is that the third one? Yeah. Okay, well, we'll get to that third one then. I'm good with this one. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Yes, Council, nope, okie dokie. No worries, you're good. All in favor, raise your right hand. Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to the next one. I would entertain a motion. Yes, Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
I move to authorize the mayor to approve a professional service agreement for integrated planning by Dahlin Group not to exceed $68,000.
We have a motion as presented.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wittgenstein. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Councilmember Marshall.
Sorry, man. Chimes, that's part of this one, right? The Chimes Corner or Chimes Development Area?
Correct.
Right? I mean, most of the land that's being identified here is not public land, or it's not our land, it's school district land. I mean, are we making plans and doing renderings and stuff for property that is not ours? We have no development rights over, we have no ability to even influence the development. I mean, are we doing something that is essentially a waste of time is my biggest concern. I understand it's grant money, but it still takes staff time. It's going to do something that you nailed it. I'm afraid of creating another report that's going to sit on the shelf, because this is realistically nothing that we can do. We're not a developer. We don't own the land. So what realistically is the point of this?
Yeah, very good question, Councilmember Marshall. So this is done throughout cities all over. And I would say, from my experience, that all cities that have done some sort of redevelopment of their area, and Oak Harbor is prime for this, right? We are reaching an end of useful life for many of those buildings and the infrastructure in the central development area. So the city needs to do something, would be my opinion. And those cities that have done something have all gone through a process just like this. So we're really addressing 3 things. One, we're addressing our specific 1.1 acres, and we're going to show renderings for that. But then we're going to show that neighborhood, that downtown neighborhood of about 80 acres. And just like I lived in Bothell for years, and what they did is they showed a rendering, and it was a 3D bird's eye view of the possibilities. And it's not individual parcels, right? You're seeing this big picture, and 80 acres is a lot of land. And so you'll be able to see how that all fits together, how parking requirements would affect what you would see, and other items that we will go through, and also then turning that toward the workshop, showing some, let's call it street scenes of what it would be like to have buildings and people, at restaurants looking out over Oak Harbor instead of being turned toward Pioneer. So we'll go through all that process with the public workshops. So yes, this is a very common way to show the community what it would be like and for them to see. And a lot of this will be using our existing zoning, which is 55 feet. And so then we will look at, are there changes, subtle changes we need to make that existing zoning to actually have, and we'll do the market studies to say, look, you've got all these things lined up, but if you can make these 3 changes, you'll make a big difference in having developers come here. And Mr. Cool can talk about developers that are already interested in coming to Oak Harbor and are very interested in this process. So this is all part of that way to attract developers. So if you're a private landowner, you're going to be excited to see how you fit into the bigger picture. And then for the central development area, 500 acres is ginormous, right? So it's only going to be selecting certain pieces of it to, again, show the community, show the private property owners, show those landowners what the possibilities are and how they fit into the bigger picture. And I'll let Mr. Cool talk on this also.
Thanks, Steve. Yes, Commissioner Marshall, a lot of what Steve is referring to are commercial nodes that could be put in certain parts of the central development area, but it's not intended to take the whole area into account. So small pieces that would be rezoned at a time and give you a different vision for it. We've been talking to a developer in Bellingham who is interested in coming here. And we're also talking about some other bigger picture projects that can help fund some city buildings. So this is all a part of the picture. And we're all really excited about some of the possibilities here, particularly with the economic analysis that we're going to get from one of these consultants that can tell us what can work downtown. So we know we have a certain rent that we can get, we know we have a certain cost, and what can we build for a certain amount of money, and what can the private market support. So a lot of this is a lot of what the analysis that goes into this study. Now again, I'm like you, I'd like to see an action plan that comes with this, and that's the most important part, saying who's going to do what and by when. And I think if we can have an action plan as part of this study, then that'll get us a lot farther than those plans that are downstairs in our offices that have been there for the last 30 or 40 years.
So developing our downtown has been a council priority for years. We know there's an issue with that in terms of remains. We faced that when we did the Pioneer. Is any of this going to address what that remediation is going to look like in order to deal with the possibility of encountering remains? And so that's my first question. My second question has specifically to do with this Chimes area, though, because a big portion of what is being addressed here is school district property. It's the bus barn area, it's where Oak Harbor Elementary School is. That's out of our purview. That's nothing that we can do unless the school district's willing to either trade that, sell it to us, do something with us in that. And so have we engaged them in this conversation, or are we just doing something that we say, hey, this looks good, but in reality, there's nothing that we can do about it? And that's my big concern specifically with this area. So my concern with the downtown obviously is the Native American artifacts that are going to be there. And then with this Chimes corner area, looking at land that we have no capacity to do anything with. It's public land, it is school district land. It's, so.
Yeah, again, two great questions. So the first one, we already, Gideon Kaufman, our in-city archaeologist, has already been involved. He's already working on this. He's already being brought in the state. And so that'll be a key ingredient, even to installing these monitoring wells, down to the mind-numbing detail of making sure we're following crossing every T and dotting every I on that, because we know that's critical. So yes, that'll be a key component. We've already engaged and had meetings with the school districts numerous times They're very excited about this. They want to be part of this process with us, and we'll continue to engage them as we move forward. And so they've already come out to Public Works and looked at an opportunity of moving the bus barn to another location. They've come out again to that property to look at it in more detail with other staff. The superintendent let me know that they need to build 2 schools right now, and that's taking a lot of their attention and focus, so they have not been able to engage us further, and we haven't had time either on these properties. But that's the intent, is to fully engage them in this process, just like we would with any private landowner. And again, the intent is not to get down to the nitty-gritty on their property. It's to show these larger areas and the potential from, let's call it, a bird's eye view.
Councilmember Wittgenstein.
I'm glad to hear that we have the school district encouraging some looks over there. Would this study you also mentioned like roadways, which is our purview, right? It is our responsibility, that whole intersection, as well as all of Midway. Are we going to get renderings out of this that are going to kind of demonstrate what that street could potentially look like with those intersections being changed up as well? Since and I'm really only talking about the same thing that Council Marshall was really trying to get you guys to talk about, which was Midway, Whidbey Avenue, the 4 corners there, what that would look like, that piece of pie, right? And really, my interest is the roads in there, because I'm well aware of the property up there and the school district is the only other partner up there other than private owners. So will we be getting some of those out of those as well?
Yes, so for this study, you're going to get what I will call concept renderings, and there won't be enough of them, right? It won't be every street within the CDA, but there are going to be, a few of these streets that we're going to use as examples to show how it would fit into the land use. Because you're right, just as you said, the transportation and land use part have to fit together to really make a good product. And so, yes, you will see concepts that will help, not on an engineering level scale or a surveying scale, but from a conceptual scale, what these places could be reimagined as.
Thank you. And
I think, Councilmember Marshall, you asked about the $10,000. So yeah, there's $50,000 out of the general fund in the current 2023-2024 budget. And so that $10,000 will come out of that already existing budgeted funds.
Any other discussion? No. We're on motion 2.
It was.
Oh, it was made? The motion was made, I'm sorry, Dan was seconded. So any other discussion? All right. Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor of motion 2 as presented, and all in favor, yes? I'm sorry, I lost track of you. Okay, yes. Passed unanimously. I'm lost here tonight.
It's only going on.
All right, so we're on the last of the 3. The professional service agreement with Dahlin Group for integrated planning. Oh, I'm sorry. Third one. Professional services agreement with the Center for Creative Land Recycling, CCLR. Yep. Right, it's the third motion. That's what I'm saying. That's where we're at.
Kudos to the night owls. I'm not one. This guy is. I move to authorize the mayor to approve a professional service agreement for vision to action plan by the Center for Creative Land Recycling, not to exceed $10,000.
We have a motion as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Wittgenstein. Any further discussion? Yep.
Fair. So you touched on what kind of the rub for me is that $10,000 is going to come from the general fund. We're struggling to figure out a way to fund our police department, and we're taking money from the general fund for something like this that, again, it's going to use up staff time. It is going to create renderings. It's going to create this pie in the sky type of situation here. But we're not really, for me, the hard time I'm having is we're not funding what's important, what we should be funding, in terms of police. And this is kind of what we've done with other things where we spend money from the general fund that we're not taking care of our primary needs. And so I guess I'm struggling that we didn't do anything with that last thing with the police department, and I would still like to come back to that at some point. But that, I guess for me, that's just where I'm struggling with this. It's just I've seen it too many times, unfortunately. You guys are new here, relatively new. I've seen it so many times. You showed it yourself. It was done in, at least 3 times prior. And it just feels very pie in the sky to me that we're going to come up with all these things, but we're not developers. I mean, we can have a rendering for our property, but we're not going to build anything. We could come up with all these ideas, but unless we have somebody that's willing to finance it, and I'm really happy to hear that we've got some people from Bellingham that are potentially interested, but I struggle with spending money from the general fund for things that we may not necessarily get any value out of when I know that we could get value from our police department with that money. And so I guess that's the issue for me in this one.
Yeah, and I know it's late at night, so I won't go into this too much, but it does get me excited to talk about this. I mean, I would say Oak Harbor, because of where you're at, we're on a path of decay because we haven't figured out how to redevelop. And this is not something new to Oak Harbor. This is true with every city. Once you get to be 70, 80 years old, you have to figure out how to road development, or I'm going to use hyperbole here late at night, or you die. So for the long term for Oak Harbor, we need to move this project forward and make some investments, and it'll be better for the police department, I believe. It'll be better for the city and the businesses and the community in the long run. So this is an investment, but this is an important investment that you make because this is going to get you to that other side. And if you think you're going to pay out of the citizens' pockets to replace all the water lines that need to be replaced just to keep people in water, it's not going to happen. There's not enough water rate that you could raise to do that. So just as one example, so we need to figure out how to bring in that development just to replace those 1940s, 1950s water lines that are scattered all over and just keep your existing citizens having drinking water. And I could go on and on and on. But this is a real key investment that you're going to make. And this is that first step that needs to happen. The second step is a lot of work. David Kuhl and his staff are going to need to do and work with you to actually make code changes then in the year following this. And those code changes are going to then allow developers to come in here and get excited and make things happen. So you're right, this rendering is just to then follow up with the code changes, but so people will be able to see if you make these code changes, this is what that would look like. So I'll leave it there, and maybe Mr. Kuhl has something to say.
I appreciate your passion with that. And I guess the struggle for me is how is this one different than what we've done? How is this plan any different than the plans that we've done previously that we've really not gotten any traction on? And so that's the question for me, really.
I wasn't here, so I can't address. I can't address, why the clean water facility, the way it was done. I could only speak personally for me. That's in my place. We did this and we're successful. And I could give you tons of examples of places that did this successfully. And so there is a path forward, and we're on it. What happened in Oak Harbor before, I really don't want to try to speculate. Yeah, thank you, sir.
All right, good. I'm good. All right, so we have a motion, we have seconded, and we have had discussion. Any further discussion? Yes, Councilor.
I had one more question based off what Councilmember Marshall said, and I'm aware this was my motion that I made. But it is a valid concern. Is there anything the police chief would like to add to that? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so any other discussion before I call for a vote? All right, all in favor, raise your right hand. We have 3, 4, and all opposed? 2 against, so it passes. All right, so wait for all 3 motions, correct? We vote for all of them?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you.
your presentation. We're on to the weight licensing agreement. And here to introduce is our finance manager, Chaz Webster. Thank you for sticking with us, Chaz.
Mayor, there are some items on the agenda that we could pull or push. Okay, I just figured I'd bring it up.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Still with me? Okay. So also tonight I have Miss Cinnamon Hudgens here, Executive Director to WAVE. Thank you for hanging out with us. So I'll just go ahead and get started. So we're going to talk about the WAVE Animal Licensing Agreement tonight. We brought this to the workshop on February 28th. And we reviewed the licensing code, the current process, reasons to change the process, vendor pricing advantages, and gained efficiencies. And under the license agreement, WAVE will administer the animal licensing service on behalf of the city. The city will purchase the animal tags each year. Contract terms are concurrent with the WAVE impound agreement with a 4-year term. WAVE will remit revenue and reconciliation reports weekly, and WAVE will maintain that animal license database. And the animal control officer and police officers will have access to the database on demand, and there are no increased costs to the city. At the workshop in February, staff received the following questions. With the use of microchips, why continue with animal licensing at all? Licensing helps to control overpopulation with the discounts for spay or neuter, also limits the number of pets within a household. Licensing is one mechanism for rabies control with rabies vaccinations required by state law. And the annual license has current information. With microchips, the pet owner will register their information and they may not update it if any information has changed over the years. And licensing is less expensive than paying the late fees, the penalties, the impound fees, along with room and board. Another question we had was, assume I don't register my pet, what is the fine? Maybe licensing should be optional rather than mandatory. Oops. Pet licensing and rabies vaccination are mandated under our local Title VII. Failure to license is a Class 2 civil infraction of $125 each. Pet owner would pay the license fee, either 10 or 40, the late fee of $5 and a fine of $25. And the impound fees may apply as well. In 2023, there were 134 pet owners who paid the late fee with a total revenue to us of $670. There were a total of 20 pet owners who paid the $25 penalty, revenue to us of $500. And the penalty is assessed when an animal is impounded and does not have a current license. The city licensed 426 pets, and that total revenue was $6,033. And my cute little dog that we want to keep him out of the impound. For the animal control officer, what are the pros and cons? Well, he'll have access to cloud-based shelter database, the animal shelter manager, with real-time information on demand with access out in the field and after hours. Increased pet reunification, lessening stress for pets and families, and keeps kennel space open for true pet emergencies, and it would assist with animal cruelty complaints. So what is our average citations written to people? So I've got a little chart here, and it's from 2019 to 2024. It's got the numbers there for you for the warnings and the citations that were issued. And then we've also have information there that 13 declared dangerous or potentially dangerous dogs since 2022. And these are the public and city advantages I shared at the last workshop in February. Of course, we've got for the public convenience of a 24/7 online licensing, the renewal reminders, 2 locations to serve, convenient licensing at time of adoption or impound, no increase to city licensing fee, and then the lost and found pet reunification. And for the city, we have increased compliance, increased animal control, officer communications, increased public health and welfare, increased staff availability for additional projects and tasks, and also lowers the cost of administration. Also, in our last workshop in February, we talked about the gained efficiencies. Partnering with WAVE, we've got additional service locations. They have a strong local and web presence. They also, our Island County also uses them. Great community outreach, the convenient 24/7 online access to licensing, licensing at time of adoption or impound. The animal control officer has mobile access to the shelter management software. There is no cost other than $2.95 per license when the pet owner registers online. Lowers the cost of administration for the pet licensing for the city, increases the staff's availability for administrative support for other projects and tasks. And if the owner moves between county and city, they won't have to make any changes there. And in addition to the advantages and efficiencies, WAVE will help us increase public awareness. So WAVE estimates about 5,700 dogs and 4,200 cats are residing in households in city limits.